Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the April 19th, 2016 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to begin. We're going to start with an invocation by Pastor Chris Dinan of the Grace Baptist Church of Vero Beach, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Joseph Flesher. Please rise.
Let's pray. Our Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us, the beauty of it that we can enjoy. We thank you for the opportunity to be together today to handle the business of our county. Lord, we just pray that you would give wisdom to those in leadership above us, that you would help them to make wise decisions. And Father, we pray that everything would be done in decency and order. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to live in this great country of freedom and liberty, and we pray that you would continue to guide and direct and help us to stand for truth and for liberty. And Lord, we just pray your blessings upon this meeting, upon all that is done and accomplished, and may you be glorified in everything. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join with me as we show appreciation to the men and women who have served this great nation that afforded us those great freedoms and liberties, and our appreciation for this nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Dryden and Commissioner Flesher. We'll move on to additions, deletions to the agenda. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I think the Attorney's Office had a matter to add under 13A. And then hopefully you all got the memo distributed yesterday or this morning. I'd like to add an item under my matters concerning a economic development opportunity that I'd like the board to have some discussion on.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
I have some reservations on the addition on the economic development opportunity.
Okay, would you prefer to?
I would prefer it not being added to the agenda.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say the reason it's an emergency addition is it's a time-sensitive matter. If we wait 2 weeks to put this on the next scheduled meeting, I think we'll miss an opportunity. And basically, I'm just asking discussion at this point, and I'd hate for us to lose a significant opportunity by waiting 2 more weeks.
It takes 5 to add it on, so.
Many of us had the opportunity to speak to a young individual yesterday and was quite impressed with some of the information going forward. And it appeared to be of great, overwhelming benefit to this county. And I just did not have the time to properly vet it out. I believe none of us truly had the opportunity to vet it out. And I have some cautionary thoughts that it is being expressed as an emergency and something that appears that the individual who is seeking our assistance or understanding for a relationship has had quite some time to be able to come forward with this, that this urgency has now become our emergency, and that, yes, I understand we don't have another meeting, but I can't truly validate or verify some of this information, and I believe it would be a great injustice to the public at large for us to discuss something that we have not been able to fully vet out.
And in fact, based on my conversations with them, there is a lot there which suggests that this ought not be a process which we rush in anyway, so.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, go ahead first.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, I feel the urgency of Commissioner O'Brien, and I see the caution of Commissioner Flesher, and perhaps the thing to do would be for us to have a special meeting on it here to accomplish to circumvent the 2-week delay, but at the same time give Commissioner Flesher some opportunity to do the research that he feels necessary on if maybe that would be.
I'm good with that to some degree, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with the county administrator and whatever member of staffs he feels warranted after this meeting, and see if we can, based on that decision, decide whether a special call meeting is warranted and then set that up.
And with that said, I must say it was a very interesting meeting yesterday. So this is not indicative of anything about the quality of the meeting whatsoever, but it was very intriguing, let's put it that way.
And I want to emphasize that this is no reflection on the individual or the corporation or the opportunity. but did not have the same response as to even on the surface of looking at this, that we did not get, or I did not get any robust response back that would be equal to some of the paperwork and documents that he had supplied. That's not to say that it's not a great foundation, a great company, and a great opportunity, that it might not be under positive consideration for the people of Indian River County, but we have to apply a little bit of caution sometimes. Thank you.
Our rules clearly state that it takes unanimous to add an emergency item, so just for the public's benefit.
Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And going off Commissioner Davis's, the urgency part, this company was running full steam ahead to the city of Jacksonville with an open invitation from them up there. It wasn't until the intervention from Wayne Howard said, why don't you come and take a look at Vero Beach? This was about maybe 3 weeks ago, give or take a few days. I knew that the company was coming. They were going to do their own due diligence first to see how the Indian River County market might work for them in the Treasure Coast region. So the time is of the essence. They have contract opportunities in Jacksonville that if we do not look at a special called meeting, as maybe Dylan can tell us the special called meeting rules, so we just have a rough idea of
generally 24, 48-hour notice.
Okay.
Special
So we
call
can do
meeting.
something very short order. So he knows if he doesn't have something, I don't want to say assurances, but some understanding of where things might go in Indian River County, then they'll exercise the contract that they have in place for Jacksonville. And, you know, wish we could talk about it more today, but we don't have 5. But in meeting with the company, doing my own research last night and some other things, I think it's something that's definitely worth exploring. I'm not saying we're jumping off 100%. By having more information discussed, and I think Commissioner O'Brien's agenda item would have allowed that. But as long as we have 24 to 48 hours to get all of us back together again, how long do you think it will take for you to get what you need to know, if there's a way we can target?
I wouldn't, yeah, so let's go ahead and schedule a special call now.
Well, or, you know, do we need a week?
Well, let me just ask if everybody would be ready for Monday morning.
A week?
This coming
5
Monday.
to 6 days from today.
I can do it sooner than that, but
Well, I understand, but I've got some real scheduling problems, and I just wanted to start there.
Does anybody disagree that, you know, we really did not have ample time to look at this? I mean, you know, the meeting was set
I agree
up.
with that, and in the meeting I had, it was very clear that there were 2 aspects of this. One was the basic economic development aspect, and the other was the use of a significant county facility. And that is the part that is of great concern to me, but I think that's going to take some time to flush out. And I think we ought to have some indication of what that is when we call the special call meeting, so that the public can be aware of some of the items that we'll be discussing.
I'm appreciative of the opportunity, but staff has not had the opportunity to fully look at this too. And when I'm presented with an overview of our facility with a proposed development or an addition to our county grounds, I think that somebody did have the time, and then we should have had the time, and that the time should have been given to staff, afforded to staff. If you can provide for me an overlay of our county facility with an addition, I'll just leave it an addition. Excuse me?
Mr. Paladin,
So-
thank you.
Thank you.
5 is enough.
He gets a newspaper. With that in mind, though, I do think that there was ample time, and that's what's got me under concern, that we've had time to discuss our county facility, yet the administration was not fully discussed on the plans.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just, I will put on, my memo said discussion, which is actually what we're doing now. So, we're kind of halfway there, but maybe to clarify, to give you all some comfort, my intent with this was that we would have some discussion, and eventually, my hope was that 3 of us would vote to direct staff to do further due diligence and then come back to us as an agenda item. So that way, we would be able to tell staff, we want them to research this, get more information, and then bring it back as a full agenda item. So it was discussion with the goal to give staff direction to do more due diligence and move things forward now instead of waiting another week before we can even tell staff to start researching this. My goal would be to tell staff to start researching them now, and let's move this thing.
Okay, how about, Commissioner, if we just, as a matter of consensus, agree that this is an issue of importance and that staff ought to put this, research it as much as can over the next couple weeks and put it on the agenda for the first meeting in May?
Does that time frame fit?
You know, again,
Well, if that was Commissioner O'Brien's intent, then let's just follow Commissioner O'Brien's intent.
Well, that's why I'm asking Commissioner O'Brien.
my concern is this, is that the gentleman clearly stated that he's got an urgency, that May 1st is his drop-dead date, and we don't have another meeting until then. I did not want him to have to leverage us to have the conversation and start moving forward. If Commissioner O'Brien would like to have a discussion for staff to fully vet this out, then perhaps maybe we should incorporate their interest and their endeavors. I did not want to burden staff and create more additional work for them if we were moving forward. It was my impression that when he expressed urgency and emergency, that he's looking for a home now. And he's not looking for an opportunity for us to engage in a contract, a discussion. He's looking for a home right now. And, you know, that's the purchase, that's the discussion, that's the contract that you don't want to go near.
Well, let's hear from staff if we could, and
And then just, part of the discussion would be hearing from the county attorney what options we have if we want to move forward. If we do want to do an RFP or an RFQ, or if we want to make this a economic development incentive, or do we want to make this a sole source item? So part of the discussion would be hearing from the county attorney what our options are moving forward, which I think is germane to any decision we
Does any
make.
of that change your mind to go ahead and
Yes,
put
it
it on the
does.
agenda? Okay.
Yes, it does. Commissioner O'Brien?
If I actually can make one,
Fixing to add it.
it's okay, I just want to make something very clear to those who may be
Let's pull it back
watching in
again.
public, is what the commissioners have been discussing is actually separate meetings individually they had with a particular individual. It was not a group meeting or multiple folks. This is why this is the first opportunity they've had to really discuss this issue amongst themselves. I just did not want anyone to perceive as part of the discussion today essentially that they had a meeting in another forum together with an applicant or an individual.
thank you, Mr. Rangel. Mr. Zito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Zito, Assistant County Administrator. I only approached the podium under the discussion of a special call meeting because I think this discussion will be most productive with the principals of the corporation in the room and presenting to you, as opposed to staff making a recommendation without having done the complete discoverable due diligence that we need to do as well. So with that, I understand that the availability may not be until the May 9th meeting, and I'm just going to have to ask these folks to reconcile their schedule with their urgency, and perhaps it may not be until May 9th, but I didn't want y'all to set a special call meeting without knowing their availability.
But again, for me, based on all we had yesterday, their availability isn't really that germane to the biggest issues of the special call meeting. To me, some of the issues that came out yesterday are ones that our community needs to discuss. I mean, the one, you know, having a festival with 50,000 people, a 3-day festival with 50,000 people at the fairgrounds, or with 25,000 people, where 25,000 people may want to camp at the fairgrounds, is something I believe we need a community-wide discussion about. So, but again, 1 out of 5. So,
And, Mr. Chairman, now that Mr. Zito has said that about the availability, we discussed that, and I asked the individual if he could be made available, and he said that his schedule is extremely tight and that he had to be on Telemundo for the next week, and then after that, he would probably not be able to be here, and since we didn't have a meeting, it would be sometime after that. That didn't sound like the emergency in which he was purporting if he couldn't be here or have a representative to such a successful company to be here so that we can discuss it. He also said that he would send a video and a PowerPoint discussion. Has he provided that?
Yes, sir.
See, and folks, we have no way of knowing if he's done that before the meeting. Commissioner O'Brien, I think we should add it.
Okay.
So you're
Move to approve
get
the
it done.
agenda as amended?
Second.
with both items?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good, thank you. So much for today's short meeting.
Made you work for it.
We will now move on to proclamations and presentations. The first is the presentation of a proclamation designating the month of May 2016 as Mental Health Month. This proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Zork to Dr. Robert Brignoli, Jean Shepard, and Patty Vasquez, and I believe there are some others who are interested in mental health, so everybody is welcome to come to the podium. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming today. And if you would, whoever speaks, name and address for the record, please.
Excellent. The May as Mental Health Month campaign actually began about 65 years ago as millions of veterans and their families were experiencing some difficulties in returning from the war. It's an initiative of Mental Health America. We're an affiliate of Mental Health America, so we're very proud to be here today to raise awareness about mental health concerns, as well as to indicate that we'll be doing a number of events and articles, et cetera, to raise awareness of mental health, to encourage people to get help early on, because we know it's important to get help before stage 4. And we'll also work at debunking some of the misconceptions about mental health concerns, like it's a weakness of character or that there's something wrong with folks who get mental help. We know this is a biopsychosocial disorder with strong biological contingencies, and we thank the County Commission for issuing this proclamation, for all of the agencies in town as well as ours, for the individuals in this county who suffer with mental health concerns as well.
Well, good morning. I'll read the proclamation and then any of the other speakers that would like to add to that. This is a proclamation designating the month of May 2016 as Mental Health Month. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas all Americans experience times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that all Americans can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being. And whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas with early and effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agencies, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens share the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental health wellness and support preventative efforts. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the month of May 2016 be designated as Mental Health Month in Indian River County, and the Board encourages all citizens to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps we can take to protect our mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions before they reach stage 4, adopted this 19th day of May 2016. Thank you.
Anybody else wants to say something this morning? Shy group. Dr. Vignoli?
You want to come up, Doctor? Your group with a photo?
Great. Thank you.
You want to get one with everybody? Yeah.
A group photo has been requested. Come on, group.
All right, I'll pass that to you to hold for the group photo.
Morning.
Morning, Michael. Hey, Mike, if you get any pictures of the kids that threw out the first pitch, can you send it to me? Thank you. That's a lot of flash.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming today. Thanks for coming. We will now have the presentation of a proclamation designating April 23rd, 2016 as 8th Annual Indian River County Day of Service. Commissioner Flesher will present to Bishop Charles Halber. Commissioner Flesher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This proclamation is about the Day of Service, but it also includes some of the fine acts in which we've experienced in our time of need. And I just want to say thank you, specifically during the hurricanes and the aftermath. And I think that many people in Indian River County, the citizens here and on the other side of the state, as I was deployed, I experienced your great efforts, and I just want to say thank you for assisting us in becoming whole again in our greatest time of need.
Thank you very much. I'm Bishop Chuck Halber from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we have sponsored the Day of Service for the past 8 years, and we appreciate the support of the county commissioners in our endeavors to serve this community. You've participated with us in the past, and again this year we're grateful to receive the proclamation.
Well, I'll proceed with the proclamation designating April 23rd, 2016 as the 8th Annual Indian River County Day of Service. Whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints has a long history of providing humanitarian services in response to emergencies and natural disasters. And whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints has been challenged by its leaders to extend the same service to those in need during times other than emergencies, hence the Day of Service. And whereas on the Day of Service, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints will volunteer in their communities and link arms with other churches, community organizations, local businesses, and residents of all beliefs in an effort to assist and serve the needy and less fortunate. And whereas the Day of Service provides a much-needed service to those most in need in the community, and it is an opportunity for the different faiths, beliefs, civic organizations, and businesses in Indian River County to share and work in the service together. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the 4th Saturday in April be recognized as a Day of Service in Indian River County. And the Board urges citizens of all beliefs and churches of all faiths to be aware of this Indian River County Day of Service as the day in which our community in different faiths and beliefs link arms to beautify our community and lend a helping hand to those in need. Duly adopted this 19th day of April 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Thank you so much. And you wanted to add?
Yes, if you don't mind, if I take just
Please.
a few minutes. We've been very fortunate to have a very large cross-section of the community join us in this endeavor. It's certainly not just us standing alone. Over the 8 years, we've been able to perform close to 100 different projects in the community. We've had the support of, I'll just name some of them. I apologize to those who I don't name today, but we've had so many help us with this that the First Presbyterian Church here in Vero Beach, Unity Center, Salt of the Earth Ministries, Community Church, Unitarian Universal Fellowship, Our Savior Lutheran Church, First United Methodist, Temple Beth Shalom, and civic organizations like the Women's Club, companies like Kinley Horn are joining us this year, and many others. I'd take too much time to name them all. But one of the great aspects of this is not only being able to provide service in the community, but to join this diverse community together, as you stated in the proclamation, linking arms together to work together, to get to know each other, and to put forth our common concerns and efforts for those in need in our community. I've brought with me our chairperson for this year, Chuck Fannin, and with your indulgence, if we could just list some of the projects we have this year and also some of the sponsors, the companies that have made things available to us to be successful this year.
Excited.
Thank you. We actually have an informational sheet for each of you, if you don't mind, we approach with those.
That'd be fine, but
Okay.
also name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Chuck Fannin. I live at 2820 Grand Isle Way here in Vero Beach, and relatively new to the area, and looking forward to having this opportunity this year to be the chairperson. We really would like to acknowledge our sponsors for the event this year. You know, without their help and assistance and donations, it'd be almost impossible, if not very difficult, to get these projects underway. The sponsors are PepsiCo, Walmart, Poinsettia Groves, Subway, Minutemen Press, Marks at the Point,
Thank you very much
R.S.
for coming.
Spears Construction, Embroid Me, Morgan Stanley, Blue Tangerine Solutions, Dr. Michael Hansen, Natalie's Orchid Island Orange Juice, Sifford's Exxon, Planet Vero, Vero Beach Flash, Cobalt's Restaurant, Curb, this is Major, and Penny Hill Subs.
Thank you.
And then if you just direct you to the back page on this year's projects, we've got 12 projects. We even had another one that just kind of came in just recently. 5 of those projects are with Curb, having to do with beautification and cleaning up of, for example, the Oslo Cemetery, the Winter Beach Cemetery. We'll be cleaning the Oslo Road from US 1 to the boat ramp. We've also got 2 projects with Habitat for Humanity. The revitalization initiative will be painting 3 houses there. Other folks will be joining us there besides the churches and faith-based groups. And we'll do the Project Restore, organize the donations that are there. There's several different, at least 2 different houses in the Hibiscus Children's Center. We'll be painting bedrooms in those houses. We'll be doing some mulching, a significant mulching project in Indian River Estates. We've got a group of young folks who will be washing and cleaning the disaster trailers of the American Red Cross. We'll be cleaning windows by the river. And with United Against Poverty Center, once again, stocking shelves and processing donations there. And I think, with Florida Veggies and More, we'll be taking down pots and resetting them for the next crop of veggies. So once again, thanks to this proclamation. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to next Saturday.
We can't say thank you enough for all the great things that are going to be happening for the citizens of Indian River County. It sounds like you have a great plan and a great league, but there might be some people out there that want to say, hey, I want in on this. I want to help. I want to be a volunteer. How can we accommodate their desire?
Well, we actually have a website out there, www.ircdayofservice.org. All they have to do is get to that website. There's a place they can sign up, plus probably a little bit more thorough description of the projects that we have. And the more the merrier. We certainly have places to plug in. Even with these projects, we could actually use a few more folks. We're still in the process of trying to get as many folks as possible here this Saturday. And certainly, we invite you commissioners, if you have a few minutes, a couple of hours on Saturday morning, to come on out.
I think this would be neat to
Sounds
put on our
great.
website, too.
And yeah.
Just to, if the board is okay.
And where are y'all staging Saturday morning?
At the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints off of 12th Avenue between
12th Street.
12th Street.
12th Street, yeah, 12th Street. I'll check if these avenues and places
Yeah.
different. Okay, 12th Street, between 27th and 43rd.
Right, and at what time?
8:15 is when we'll just kick off the event, and hopefully have everybody, the kickoff event, and everybody out and moving by 8:30, 8:45 to the different projects.
It looks like the county administrator took down that information, so it'll be fine to get it
Would
on the
you
website.
need it again?
In fact, if you'd give it to Scott, who's sitting right behind you,
I certainly will.
he'll
Okay.
have it on the web.
We'll get it right on the website.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Photo.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Reno. Trying to get you more soldiers.
We're gonna find out that the rookie always gets the chairman.
No, we'll get them.
Move to your left. There you go.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Jim.
We will now have the presentation of a proclamation designating the month of May 2016 as Historic Preservation Month. Commissioner Davis is going to present this to Carolyn Bayless and Ruth Stanbridge. Good morning, Commissioner Davis.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, lady, for being here this morning. This is a proclamation designating the month of May 2016 as Historic Preservation Month. Whereas the National Historic Preservation Act was signed into law in 1966 and established the nation's legal framework for protection and preservation of historic buildings, landscapes, and archaeological discoveries. And whereas over the past 50 years, the National Historic Preservation Act has had a profound and positive impact on local communities throughout Florida, especially through the National Register of Historic Places, a program honoring our nation's diverse cultural, agricultural, natural, and built environments. And whereas the United States and thousands of public, private, and nonprofit sector partners, such as the Indian River County Historical Society, are commemorating the 50th anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act throughout 2016 under the banner of Preservation 50. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives, and Historic Preservation Month 2016 is an occasion for celebrating the historic resources within our community. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the month of May 2016 be designated as Historic Preservation Month in Indian River County, adopted this 19th day of May 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you so much. We want to thank Indian River County and the cities especially.
Ruth, name and address for the record, please.
Ruth Stanbridge, 4835 66th Avenue, Vero Beach. We want to thank you because of Indian River County and the cities have always embraced historic preservation. It's part of our heritage that we use in our eco-heritage tourism, so it's now part of our economy. And we have worked very hard over these last 30 years that we've been a society working with the different communities in restoring and adapting our buildings and our sites to use by the public and our visitors to the county. And some of those are, well, for instance, our railroad station, which is our office. We were able to work with the private sector on the old courthouse, which is now a viable business organization. The diesel plant with the city, which is now an anchor for Art Village, which will be a vitalization for downtown Vero Beach. Sebastian, we just finished the working waterfront, working with the city of Sebastian and their partners, and the old school in Fellsmere, which is now their city hall. On historic sites, we've dealt with Jungle Trail, which is a greenway, the old corridor, the railroad corridor from Sebastian to Fellsmere, which is a rails to trails, and will in the future invite a lot of folks to come there. McKee's Botanical Gardens, we work very much to get that back into ownership that the public could enjoy. And of course, Historical Dodgertown, and we've worked with them vitally. Today and during the last 2 years, the only way the Historical Society, the Indian River County, the City of Vero Beach, and the old Ice Age Committee would have been a consulting party to the Federal Rail Administration and the All Aboard Florida was through this National Historic Preservation Act in Section 106. And that status had allowed all of us to continue with the process to stand up to protect our historical, our cultural, and archaeological resources. So we believe that the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, which we called in when we saw that things were not going properly, are the ones who was able to make us part of that consulting project. So today the project for All Aboard Florida is not complete, and the proclamatic agreement has not been signed. So there is hope that our resources will be protected. And that gives us a little extra reason to be proud of our month of May as National Historic Preservation Month. We thank you for this proclamation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Okay.
We'll move on to the minutes. Anyone care to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Approve the minutes?
We have one more.
More proclamation, Mr. Chairman.
Ah, yes. Presentation of a proclamation designating May 1st, 2016 as Law Day and May 1st through 7th, 2016 as Law Week. Commissioner O'Brien will present this. Ms. Grawl, welcome.
I won't take that personally that you forgot.
Thank you.
I was thinking about you, Aaron, so don't worry.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and read this proclamation, then you can tell us a few words about some of the events going on, and maybe an update on the Sawbones versus Jawbones game that's
Thank you.
coming up. This is a proclamation designating May 1st, 2016 as Law Day and May 1st through 7th, 2016 as Law Week. Whereas Law Day is an occasion of public acknowledgement of our nation's and Florida's heritage of justice, liberty, and equality under the law. And whereas Law Day has been annually proclaimed by the President of the United States since Dwight D. Eisenhower proclaimed the first Law Day on May 1st, 1958. And whereas the United States Congress in 1961 encoded the presidential practice into law, statutorily designating May 1st as Law Day. And whereas the year 2016 marks the 50th anniversary of a milestone in legal history, the United States Supreme Court's landmark 1966 decision in Miranda versus Arizona, concluding that statements made by a suspect in police custody are generally inadmissible if the suspect has not been made aware of his or her Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights. And whereas in response to this decision, law enforcement personnel throughout the country provide a Miranda warning to suspects in custody, appraising them of their right to remain silent, their right to an attorney, and their right to appointed counsel in cases where they cannot afford an attorney. And whereas the Miranda warning has become one of the nation's most recognizable legal expression and a symbol of procedural fairness that represents much more than just the words of the warning. And whereas the criminal justice system still faces many challenges, and we all must occasionally rededicate ourselves to the admirable goal of providing fair and equal treatment for all. And whereas promoting public understanding of the history of our civil liberties is an important component in the civic education of the citizens of the United States and the state of Florida. And whereas the American Bar Association has identified the 2016 Law Day theme as Miranda, more than just words. And whereas Law Day, May 1st, 2016, and Law Week, May 1st through 7, 2016, will be commemorated in Indian River County with events such as Ask a Lawyer, Lawyers in the Classroom, and a breakfast honoring the local judiciary and their staff. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that May 1st, 2016 be designated as Law Day, and May 1st through 7, 2016 be designated as Law Week in Indian River County. Adopted this 19th day of April, 2016, and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. Erin Grawl, 1460 51st Court, Vero Beach. I have the honor of being the Indian River County Bar Association president this year, and attending with me today, and who's a regular in this room, Bill DeBrawl is the president-elect of the Indian River County Bar Association. Thank you very much for the proclamation. Our association looks forward to Law Week every year, as it's an opportunity for us to engage with the public, with our school system, about the importance of a topic that has been selected nationally. Miranda, More Than Words, will explore the procedural protections afforded to all of us by the U.S. Constitution, how these rights are safeguarded by the courts, and why the preservation of these principles is essential to our liberty. And we have the opportunity to do that by putting lawyers in the classrooms, in our elementary, middle, and high school classrooms. Our Lawyers Auxiliary, which is a supportive organization run by Ann Katchick and Sandy Harpring, and by many other spouses of attorneys locally, is integral in making that happen. Also, our Young Lawyers Division Chair, Jesse Larson, has been at the forefront of organizing this week of activities. We will be in the classrooms every day during the week of May 2nd to the 6th. Also that week, we do have an Ask a Lawyer scheduled at the library, And that is in conjunction with Florida Rural Legal Services, and individuals throughout our community can come and have a one-on-one conversation with an attorney about a topic that's important to them. That's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Wednesday, May 4th. And finally, that week, on May 6th, we have an assembly at Dodgertown Elementary, and members of the Young Lawyer Division will be on hand to speak to an assembly of 5th grade students, after which they will be distributing books on the Constitution, generously donated by the Lawyers Auxiliary. Finally, we could not arrange for the almost annual, is what we call it, softball game between the doctors and lawyers in Indian River County to take place that Saturday, but it will take place on Saturday, May 14th at Historic Dodgertown at 10 a.m. We look forward to the competition with the doctors each year. The lawyers are, I believe, 2 years behind. And the doctors do have a regular softball team, and so they bring it in a big way. So we have our work cut out for us. But that is always a good game, and the proceeds from that game do benefit the United Way. So we look forward to that this year. And again, we thank you very much for your proclamation and your attention to this. All of the information will be able to be found on our website, www.indianriverbar.org. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for your work.
The year after I was born. I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Probably. And I was just trying to get you out on the campaign trail a little.
Is that an indication they needed Miranda?
I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Turn around for a...
To the right a little bit, Bill? A little
Keep
more.
going, keep going.
Bill, you ought to know this.
Yeah, you'd think Bill would be a little, more on top of it. Now we'll move to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 22nd.
No move approval.
Commissioner Flesher and Commissioner Davis seconds it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. It passes 5-0. The next is information items, and I'll just note that the Veterans Council is having their Veterans Outreach Golf Tournament, which was a great event last year. This is going to be on Saturday, June 18th, 2016. So veterans, please get your clubs ready. It's going to be another great day. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Anybody wish to pull something from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item
yes.
K.
Yes, staff needs to pull an item 2 because we've got to make a clarification. We've got an error in the heading.
And that item is?
8E.
Anyone else, gentlemen? I'll ask if anyone from the public wishes to pull something from the consent agenda for discussion. There being none, except
Approve as amended?
we have a motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien as amended, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Later in the agenda, item 14E1, I think it somewhat relates to item 8K as an alternative sources to nitrogen removal. What I'm considering, and I don't know how to blend these two items together, what I'd like to see, if there's a way we can have the discussion on both 8K and 14E1 at the same time, since in my mind they're kind of related to each other.
Well, it should have been done at the beginning of the meeting, but I'll see if anybody has any objections. We'll move the 14
Related.
up.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
well then, do you have something you want to add then as part of your item?
Well, on 14E1 is also a similar request to look at alternative measures for nutrient removal. But after the recent lagoon program that I hosted a number of different speakers, there are some other technologies out there that not only remove the nitrogen and the phosphorus, but remove suspended solids, restore water clarity, remove other harmful toxins and cyanobacteria, reduces chlorophyll, produces a beneficial biomass. And what I'm wondering is not saying not to do this at the moment, but to explore and reach out maybe initially to Cindy Brandt Williams from the Water Management District see what information they have currently on the shelf. They're currently writing an RFQ that's coming out, I believe, within the next week or two, that's basically written and ready to go out the door, to see, trying to get the biggest bang for the buck for our taxpayers is the current system that we proposed for just phosphorus and nitrogen. Should we also consider systems that will remove a number of other host of items? And also a specific question maybe that Chris can answer. Has DEP issued a credit ratio on the nutrients removed? Some of the, what I'd say, the newer technologies already have BMAP credits on a one-to-one basis, and I don't know if we're currently receiving a one-to-one credit under our current nutrient removal system, say at Osprey.
Chris Mora, Public Works Director, and Keith McCauley will join me here shortly.
Okay.
He could probably answer that question a little bit better. One thing I wanted to make clear is this item 8K is actually a standalone item that we wanted to bring forward to the board to begin looking at a pilot plant study for the North Relief Canal, the only canal that we don't currently have a pollution removal system on.
Right.
And I know that Commissioner Zork, you want to look at other processes in which to remove it, but we wanted to look at just this pilot study first and then discuss the other items. I don't know which order you want to do them in, but 8K was actually asking for approval to move forward with the pilot study at this time. So I don't know how you want to blend the two items.
Based on what I've seen in the backup, I'd like to not delay this program. I think that people in the county want us to move forward as fast as we can on these projects. I'd like to see us at least go forward with the pilot program. And Commissioner Zork, if you have other things in mind, I think it would be appropriate for you to bring them at future matters under your matters and with some backup. And so we'd have a basis on which to have a conversation.
And one thing that I want to make clear here is that we have, as staff, we have always looked towards a managed system, not a passive system, but a managed system. Mm-hmm. And the three sites that we do have stormwater controls at PC Main, Egret Marsh, and Osprey, the most recent one, Osprey Marsh, they're all managed systems, actively managed. And that is what we were proposing under 8K, to do a similar type system, because, you know, these are all state-of-the-art, cutting-edge type of technologies, but as staff, the ones that we're more familiar with and more comfortable with, and that we've been able to show, for example, at Egret Marsh, we can pull nitrogen out of the water at less than $30 a pound. Now, as we look around the state and look at some of these other processes, they're in the hundreds of dollars. Even I've seen even figures of $1,000 a pound to remove nitrogen. So as staff, we want to go for the most efficient system and also the one that we're most familiar with. And Keith has designed these systems from the ground up. He's very familiar with them. Mm-hmm. And now that he's here, maybe he can answer that question on the BMAP credit, if we're getting credit at did you say a one-to-one?
Oh, one-to-one basis under our Osprey Marsh or any of the other ones. Does DEP issued a credit letter of the BMAPs of, do we get pound for pound on a one-to-one ratio, or is it at a different ratio?
No, as far as I know, I haven't seen a letter, but the numbers we've reported to them, like say we claim 1,000 pounds of phosphorus removal, they give us 1,000 pounds of phosphorus removal. So
Okay.
It's one-to-one as far as what we report and what they get, to the best of my knowledge.
And then who keeps track of our BMAP tally? Do they just subtract that off of our BMAP numbers?
Well, they haven't officially assigned them yet.
I know they're in flux at the moment.
Yeah, they're proposed, but what we do with staff is stormwater operates PC Main and Egret Marsh, and then utilities operates Spoonbill Marsh and Osprey Marsh. And we track our nutrient removal, they track theirs. And when the reporting period comes to report yearly removals to DEP, you know, we just give them our totals for the number, and we give Commissioner Solari numbers each month from all 4 projects. So we're sort of tracking them together that way.
Following up on what Commissioner Zork says, it's probably time for us to boost up the things we present to EPA, because we now have the history on the one oyster bar thing out in the lagoon, right? We should have a second one.
Yeah, that's a utility project. I'm not real familiar with that.
I understand, but I mean, as an organization, we should be adding those projects to the list we submit.
Yeah.
And at least they did, DEP did give credit for the fertilizer ordinance, and I think there are a bunch of criteria, about 4 to 6 criteria, that our fertilizer ordinance and
Right.
enhancement purchase could add, so we ought to go ahead and try to get the credit for that also, so.
Right.
Commissioner Zork, I'd be happy to take a motion just to direct staff to formalize that process a little bit to make sure.
We already are getting credit for the fertilizer ordinance.
I hadn't heard that.
But there's
How much-
other stuff that we could do.
How much credit are we getting for the fertilizer ordinance then?
It's I think the way they have it broken down for that is there's fertilizer, irrigation ordinance, I think a pet waste ordinance, and something else. And for all 4 of those, I believe you get 4% or 3%
Well, they're
credit.
talking about percentages, but I would like to
Yeah.
get a number from them, because I think
Well,
that's-
the number would be the percent of whatever they assign.
Okay.
The new numbers that they're coming out with?
Well, the draft numbers, we have those.
Right.
But I don't know if they're going to be the final ones or not.
Item 8K is, again, a project that's consistent with the other marsh projects that have been performed by the county with the advisement of the consultant.
Well, it's similar. I didn't do the RFQ based on an algal turf scrubber because I think there may be ways to use aquatic plants that are cheaper to operate a system rather than just a pure algal turf scrubber, because although an algal turf scrubber is very efficient, you have to pump 24 hours a day to keep the algae alive, and at night you don't really get a whole lot of nutrient removal from the algae. And so my idea was to get a system where it's basically you pump in the day, you cut the pump off at twilight or something, and it stays off until sunrise. And so that'll cut your energy costs in half. But you're using aquatic plants to remove the nitrogen suspended solids. They'll settle out in a deep chamber up front, and the phosphorus will come out with the plants. And so it was that's sort of a managed floating plant treatment process, followed by probably a rooted plant process, and then maybe a flat system with algae in it to sort of polish the water off, and then also reoxygenate the water as it's flowing over the surface in a thin sheet. But it wouldn't be sloped, and it wouldn't be 24-hour pumping. But if that cost didn't come in as far as nutrient removal costs cheaper than the Egret Marsh does, then I would have recommended going back with another algal turf scrubber. But I don't think it would be any more expensive, though.
A little more consistent with the successful Osprey project.
Well, Osprey is also an
With the
algal
plant.
turf scrubber. It would sort of be like a blend between that and Spoonbill Marsh, maybe. Because I see the tail end of the thing being a large marsh system.
Spoonbill, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so I would be okay with moving 8K forward, since it's sort of an analysis and then I'll have to see where 14E1 goes. But it seems to be in talking with people from DEP, St. John's, South Florida, that there are some other means and measures out there that are worth exploring to learn the information. Talk with, I think Sherry Brant Williams is probably one of the more up to speed on some of these issues. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. If they've already gone through a process, it's eliminated some processes that are not good. We obviously, let's not look at those if somebody else has already discounted them. So for discussion purposes, or to move, if we could, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to move 8K.
I'll second it.
Forward, and then I'll then do a separate motion on 14E1.
Mr. Johnson, come on up to the podium, please. Name and address for the record.
Is this Bob Johnson, Carlin subdivision? This is the property that was recently bought adjoining?
No, it's not. That's the South Relief Canal. This is on the North Relief Canal. Have we identified the property, Keith, for the project that you're talking about?
We have a couple recommended spots, but we haven't purchased anything.
Okay, so I guess it would be determined by the pilot study to some degree going forward, what we might need.
Well, that's sort of independent. I mean, those locations could be a chemical system or a plant system, either way. I just haven't had time to write a memo recommended.
Okay. So Bob, for your question, no, it's not the Osprey Marsh or Osprey Acres that they're talking about. This is on the North Relief Canal.
The property that was purchased next to Osprey is still zoned residential. I was just wondering what the procedure would be to have that property rezoned.
Well, there's a matter under Commissioner Zork's matters today, later in the day, which would be material to your question there. So if you can stick around, you can make a
The
comment there.
rezoning of the property, the $1 million that we already spent is
No,
delayed?
not
Is
that,
what
but
you're saying?
the use of the property is under discussion under Commissioner Zork's matters later in the agenda.
Commissioner Zork has an item that, well, either that we may keep it zoned that or we may not based on his item, so that's later on in the agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one other question under discussion. Keith, do we have to, for this project to move forward after we hire the consultant, do we have to then purchase a piece of property for them to put their pilot program on, so the pilot?
No, it's a small pilot plant, and that may have been why some of the consultants that picked up the RFQs didn't reply. We had one company ask questions, and their questions tended to lead you to believe that they were thinking more of a demonstration project where you have several acres that they build something on for a couple of years. But we're planning on doing this within the Indian River Farms Water Control District right-of-way.
Okay.
Near 58th Avenue and the North Relief Canal, somewhere in that vicinity near some electric.
Where the bridge area is up there? Okay.
Yeah, this would be similar to the pilot study that we did for the South Relief Canal.
Correct.
We did it within the district right-of-way. We didn't need any additional land.
Okay, at this point, it's item 8K that's up. Commissioner Zork made the motion. I seconded it. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner Zork, your item related to nutrient removal.
Right, yes. 14E1 is kind of looking at some of the proven technologies. There's a lot of things that people say will work, but focusing on ones that have a 5-year or longer track record that DEP has monitored and done some parallel testing on with some of the companies. What I'd like to see, and an RFP maybe is premature, I'd like to maybe see where if staff could work with one of our consultants that we have on our ongoing agreements that we have to look at what are some of the benefits of these technologies. I just listed some of them based on information that I had came across doing some research. But I think we need, if we can, and if it's cost competitive, we can do phosphorus and nitrogen and a number of other nutrient removals and improvements to the water we're discharging. I think we need to look at those. The big question comes in, what value do you place on the other removed solids that come out of the water column? You know, how do you equate a pound equivalent for those? So we'll have to think through the cost-benefit analysis of the additional features that these, or the different treatments that these processes can bring to the table. We know how to evaluate phosphorus and nitrogen, but when you have these other items, how do we either equate a pound equivalent or a cost per 100,000 gallons treated, or some formula that we can wrap our heads around to look at, okay, we know what these two are compared to our other projects, but how do we value the other 4 or 5 or 6 items that these other processes can bring forward? And so on that, I did look at some of our costs that we have, and we really have to look at our true cost, which some of the backup material, when we look at our cost per pound, we have to kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink in that we expense, whether it was by grant or something else, to really get to a true cost per pound.
Well, it is with Egret Marsh and PC Maine. We didn't include any of the grant money for any of those figures.
You do or don't?
Don't.
You don't, so those,
Right, they're totally separate from grant money.
right, so on these numbers, if you put those costs back in, if we had to pay for them, then our cost per pound would be higher.
No, the cost, the $133, whatever it is for phosphorus,
Right.
and $29 for nitrogen for egret marsh, they do not include grant money. It was as if the county had paid for the complete project itself.
Okay, no, that's the way we should look at our
Right.
numbers. The total cost, regardless of where the funds came from, because to reconcile your cost, if you left out a grant or some type of shared arrangement, we wouldn't have a true cost. So that's the way we need to continue to look at that, I think.
If I could make one point, one thing you mentioned, Commissioner Zork, is to possibly utilize engineering firms from our continuing services agreements.
If we have someone.
Right, when we put out the RFQ for the North Relief Canal pilot study, none of them responded.
Okay.
Now, we're assuming that they didn't feel comfortable in addressing the issues for a managed type of system, or maybe they just weren't interested. We don't know, but we may not get much of a response from those firms that are on the continuing services because we didn't before.
Right.
It would seem from your item is to some degree trying to figure out what 5 or 10 projects have been done in the past, and I'm guessing that we're talking about bigger projects, ones that might remove somewhere between 5 and 20,000 pounds of nitrogen in a year, so not baffle boxes and things like that.
Right.
So as a starting point, why don't you just ask staff if they can do a little research and try to see what the universe of those projects may be, and the best way may be to just talk to different counties up and down the Treasure Coast and the St. Johns River Water Management District and perhaps the South Florida, and see if they can get a universe of maybe the top 5 or 10 projects. And then, based on that, if we want to go forward another step and see which
Right.
one of those might be useful. Is that?
Possibly. It may be a conversation starting with the St. John's folks would get us ahead quicker to decide, the companies that didn't bid, because I talked to a few that didn't bid on this one, and it was because of some of the language or some of the presumptions that I think after they talked to you, it wasn't a pilot project on multiple acres. It was, something of a different scope.
Actually, I didn't talk to any of them because the process says they reply in
Correct.
writing, so it was all in writing. And I think Aquafiber and CMI or something like that
Right.
asked some kind of questions.
And those, only when they said they were not submitting did I have a conversation with them. I was curious why they weren't submitting, and there was some language that they just didn't think their technology, the way the scope was written, wouldn't bear out well when you're looking for a shortened time frame. When you have a system that's capital intensive, it's hard to justify the numbers.
Right, and it was based on a plant system as well, and not a chemical addition system. The RFQ was.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, what I will do is, how about I pull this item off? I'll work with staff a little more. We'll reach out to the district, see what we can put together to, and then maybe even can we have conversations with some of the people that are on our continuing agreements, if it's them just helping us evaluate or score some options that they may be interested in versus the way this other one was written. And also,
sometimes-
can we piggyback under St. John's contracts if they have a firm that they work with that's an expert in this sort of nutrient removal, newer systems? Can we piggyback under their agreements for consulting?
Yes.
As a question?
As
Okay.
long as it's an RFQ. And
Right, as long as they were acquired appropriately.
The one issue is, I think we have an issue with CCNA contracts being piggybacked, but if it's a bid or an RFP or some of those types of things, we should be fine. But if it's a
Okay.
continuing services contract pursuant to CCNA, we would have an issue with that.
Okay.
Really?
So we'll go that route. I'll get with you folks.
I think that sometimes it's dealing with these agencies, DP and St. John's, they like working staff to staff, so we have to be careful that they feel pressure sometimes if we do it the other way.
Right.
I got a quick question,
So,
Mr. Chairman.
I'll go for Commissioner Davis and then Commissioner O'Brien.
Just in looking at the systems, and this whole conversation is about how do we continue to move forward, and we're trying many different ways. It would seem to me that the active versus passive form of nutrient removal is going to be more expensive, but I'm assuming that staff is thinking that it's more beneficial, a little more, it might be more expensive, but it's so much more effective.
Well, I think if you look at the day-to-day operational costs, it's more expensive on a yearly basis. But sooner or later, these passive systems are going to plug up with nutrients. And when you have to go to clean them, then you've got a small disaster on your hand, because you basically have to rebuild the system. You've got to pull out all the existing plants, like in a wetland, all the muck and peat that is accumulated in the sediment, and then build it back up again. And so when you consider that, it jacks the price up. And when you do a net present worth price, it comes out where the managed plants are, I believe, more efficient and cheaper. When we did the preliminary design for Egret Marsh, we didn't do that in-house. We had a company, ECT, along with Carter Associates, did a analysis of an algal turf scrubber, chemical feed system, and a passive wetland system. And one of the things against the wetland was the size of land that's required is much greater than you need for a passive or an active system. But when they did the net present worth value, I think over 50 years, I don't remember for sure, 40 or 50 years, the managed plant system was the best bang for the buck. And I can't remember if the chemical one or the plant one, the passive one came in next, but that's why we went with the managed algal turf scrubber.
Okay, and then one other question, Mr. Chairman. The out west, what I'm going to call it the West Wastewater Treatment Facility that we have out there, are we getting any credit off of that at all? And it's kind of outside the scope of the rest of these, I understand that, but at least we are doing something with the water, and that appears to be a passive system.
Yeah, it's not on the BMAP list I've seen from the district, but any...
For the record, Vincent Burke, we are not getting the credits that we would like. In fact, when Herschel Vineyard was the secretary of the DEP, the county attorney and I went up to Tallahassee for the very fact of trying to capture some of these credits that we were doing from the scrubber systems. We are removing the nutrients, we are receiving the efficiencies, but the only thing that the DEP cares about is whether or not we reach or exceed our waste load allocations, which are in our operating permit. So as long as we remove as many nutrients as possible, that's great for that type of environment. We do use some deep water, some mid-water, and some shallow water cells to remove as much nutrients as possible. But unfortunately, we don't get any additional credit from the DEP. They just care about our operating permit assigned to the effluent that comes out of the wastewater plant.
And Mr. Burke, actually, it's kind of worse than that, isn't it? Because we went up to Tallahassee to see if we could try to figure out how to use more of the West Treatment Plant and put more water in that, because basically that plant is, as I understand it, correct me where I'm wrong, but those acres are most necessary for when we have high rain months, and we actually can't use golf courses. We've gone 6 months at a time where we put that water just straight to golf courses. So basically that system is very underutilized. And so we're trying to figure out a way to actually use that system during those periods so we can take more water out of the ditch and use it as a passive system, basically. But if you are using it and, say, filling it with water even during a dry period, and then you get a big rain and the water flows over, some nitrogen might flow over with it, and we'd be penalized on our permit for that. And so we were trying to use other projects as a bank. And how long has it been? Almost 2 years now?
More than that, probably about 3 years now.
And we still haven't figured out how to get a credit for that. So because of the permitting section of DEP, we're unable to use that unused capacity. And that meeting was, for me, one of the great reasons why I just love bureaucracy so much. We had about 8 DEP people on the table. Everybody from the BMAP section was, you can see the faces light up and think, this is good project, good project, good project. And then the 2 permitting people say, no, you might break the, and so that was discouraging at best.
Thank you.
After Mr. O'Brien, then after Chairman O'Brien.
Commissioner
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just while we're looking at all this, I'd like to see if we could also ask staff to, Commissioner Zork has provided a list of additional benefits, and I think a lot of those are projects achieved, but we're just not monitoring things like dissolved solids and water clarity and dissolved oxygen. But, you know, the skimmer project does have a sediment trap, and there's a mountain of dirt we pulled out of there that didn't go to the lagoon. And I would imagine the water coming off Egret or Osprey Marsh has been cleared up some, and might have a higher DO level. Produce a beneficial biomass. We're doing the Lagoon Saver compost, so we're achieving that. And compared to a large stormwater project, both those projects are relatively small footprints. So I think, well, we don't measure any of that. We just look at nitrogen and phosphorus. So if we're going to compare other projects, I think we need to look at ours with the same criteria, because I think we are achieving a lot of those benefits. We just haven't documented it.
Okay,
So.
no, that's a fair question.
Mr. Johnson's been sitting there, so I'll go for him and then you. Mr. Johnson?
The property that was recently purchased adjacent to the Osprey project, when the motion was made, it was made to, by the chairman, to have a system that was compatible with the Osprey system. As justification for not having it a freshwater retention pond. And in that discussion at the meeting, it was brought out that the Osprey has only been operating for 8 months, 40% effective to date. And my question is whether the property can be utilized, since we've already purchased it for $1 million. If that's going to be what you had in mind for this project that you just discussed, or it's going to be a separate project as compatible with the Osprey.
It would be a second project.
We really don't know now whether the Osprey project is a success.
Actually, it would be more like Egret Marsh. Egret Marsh has two components, the algal-turf scrubber and a series of finishing ponds. Roughly, and Keith, you can correct me as I'm wrong, of 100% of the nitrogen that comes in there, about 55% of it's removed by the algal-turf scrubber, and these are more the organic nitrates. Then it moves into the passive system, where it removes another up to 40%, and these are more the inorganic nitrates, as I understand it, which require more time to be removed. So at the end, by the time the water gets back, it's removed almost 95% of the total nitrates. And that's what makes the two systems together so complementary. And so it becomes an extremely efficient system when you combine the two, the algal-turf scrubber with the series of finishing ponds.
So what you're saying is it'll be the same architectural design as the Osprey, or it'll be a newer prototype than the...
No, it's the Osprey Marsh algal-turf scrubber is a treatment facility that, just think of it as a black box. On the property next door, there'll be a different kind of black box, but it's not going to be a structural. It's like a long serpentine snake of water going down through the property with...
So will it drain the nitrogen and other particles similar to how the Osprey works? Or
well, what will happen is, in doing this serpentine flowway, that water will be exposed to water lettuce, which will take out more nutrients, which will be harvested. You'll have a settling basin in there as well, and you'll slow the flow down so that it has a chance to remove more of these nutrients. So it will work similar to Egret Marsh in that the water is being polished as it flows out, and more of the nutrients are being removed. But it's going to be a unique design in and of its own.
Isn't that more of a passive system then?
It's a little of both. We'll have a deep settling basin up front, and then following that is a water lettuce system, which will have a shallower bottom, and we'll let water lettuce grow that'll be diked off with floating debris booms to keep it in place. But that will absorb a lot of the dissolved nutrients that pass through Osprey Marsh, because it doesn't remove it all. It removes a lot, but not all of it. And then in addition, prior to that, we will probably discharge untreated canal water into the polishing pond at Osprey Marsh to increase the nutrient load going into the Osprey acre system. And that'll just allow us a bigger load to reduce, because sometimes the load coming off Osprey Marsh is going to be fairly low, so we need to bump it up a little bit sometimes. So we'll probably blend untreated and treated water that'll go through Osprey Acres. It'll go through the serpentine thing into a wetland, and then it'll go through what I'm calling right now is a reed filter marsh, which would be planted plants that are specifically designed to take out nitrogen and phosphorus, and then another water lettuce system to do a final polishing before it goes into another deep settling pond prior to discharge into the canal, J Canal.
Okay, then one last question. How close, or assuming that the TMDLs come in at what people are talking, I know they're not settled, but if they come in at what is being, I'm going to say a whisper number, how far off with, once we get these projects completed, would you say that we will be as far as meeting the goals of our TMDL?
Well, my numbers, assuming I'm making the correct assumptions, I believe with the 4 existing systems we have, which is Osprey, Spoonbill, and Eager Marsh in the canal system, if we build the North Relief Canal system, the Osprey Acres system, and then a system on the North and South Canal where we use a long reach excavator to harvest water lettuce like David Gunner is doing on the Main Relief Canal. I believe if we do all those and then implement a program sort of like Florida Yards and Neighborhoods, because you get credit, 2 or 3% credit for that, then we should exceed our phosphorus removal and almost hit our nitrogen removal, be a little bit low on that, based on the recent numbers we've had from the existing systems. And so we're prorating them, and then using the numbers that David Gunner gave me for his removals with water lettuce in his bucket system.
And so and I know this might be a long thought process, but to get to that nitrogen, what other program do you envision, or do you have a plan, or what's your thoughts?
I'm hoping that we'll have more of a less wet winters for a while, which will lower the pollutant load and reduce it. But I don't really know. It's so close that my numbers might be off, and maybe we will hit it. But the phosphorus was quite a bit below what I was projecting, but the nitrogen was a little above it. But I would say build the ones we're recommending and just see what happens. And then if we have to do something else for nitrogen, then we'll address it at that point.
I read the report that was published by the Utilities Department, and everybody in the Utilities Department in the study that was done for freshwater retention recommended it not be built, that the cost exceeded it looked like $3 million each different phase. It was $1 million plus to buy, plus other, so it was everybody disapproved the purchase of the property, and then it was decided to change the scope of the program to make it into a stormwater, and county voted to go ahead and purchase the property without any further study on whether it should be a stormwater. The freshwater study recommended no, but anyway, I was now wondering where the funds are coming from to proceed with this program. The purchase was $1 million. Where did that money come from to buy that? And then where's the other millions of dollars coming to proceed with doing a stormwater project?
We're actually looking stormwater, a combination of our funding, which would be probably could be optional sales tax, and grant funding from St. John's.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the grant funds. I've been working on a cost share grant with St. Johns River Water Management District for the Osprey Acres project. And I talked with Melissa Della Ponte, something like that is her name. She's a grant manager at St. John's this morning, actually, on it. And she says they're very excited about the concept with the trails and the preservation of the uplands and stuff like that. And the grant they prepare or provide is 33% funding of the project, of the construction costs. And so using some sort of conservative numbers for constructing the thing based on the conceptual layout I've got, which really isn't an engineered one, it's sort of just conceptual right now. But the grant application is going to be for $1.2 million and some change, which is quite a bit of money. But as far as actual construction, there's a lot of options because we can offer the dirt to the contractor and have them almost dig it at cost for them, or maybe for free, because there's a lot of dirt going to come out of the place. And so you have some creative options you can do during bidding for the thing, but I don't think grant problems are going to be much of an issue. And then there's also another grant for habitat creation, which we would be doing quite a bit of with this. So.
Is there going to be another study for moving forward on the stormwater? Because the study that was presented to the county was based on a study that was done by the utilities department, which has a responsibility for that, but you have responsibility for
we coordinate everything between stormwater and utilities all the time. We meet on these items.
Bob, I think you're talking, I may be wrong, but are you talking about the study that we did with CDM?
No, I think he's talking about the smaller alternative water supply study that was done as part of the due diligence when we purchased the 83 acres.
Okay, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's the 83 acres.
Okay.
And Bob, if I could maybe help clarify it, basically the study said if we wanted to use the property as a surface water reservoir, because the soils were so permeable, it wasn't the best use for that because you'd lose too much water going to the ground table. However, from a stormwater treatment point of view, that's viewed as a positive because that just means less nutrient-rich water making it back into the lagoon. So that's why the original proposal was to purchase the property and design a stormwater facility that could be converted to a surface water reservoir. That motion failed, and then the motion was to purchase the property as a stormwater park, and that motion passed. But again, because of the permeable soils, it may not be appropriate for a reservoir, but does work to our benefit for our stormwater treatment.
It'll be grants and optional sales tax.
Yes, and we're going to try, of course, we will try and maximize on the grants, and we've been very successful. And Keith's been on the phone to St. John's. They're excited about this project. So, and we think it'll go very well. You know, we get all the engineers in a room, and I suggest if you attend, you put on a pot of strong coffee as they discuss it.
I have one last question. The South County Canal. We've had some serious rain in the last couple of days, but right now the canal has never been higher than it is right now, and I'm just wondering how you can lower that, because if it's high now, if we have a serious rain for like hurricane or.
The drainage districts control that, and they're very good at it. They know what they're doing, and they control that.
The water's being cut off at 27th Avenue. Originally, it was supposed to be cut off at 20th Avenue. So the water, Joe, after you hit when you drive over that, when you go and look at the water that's running out of the canal from 27th Avenue, it's it's hardly any water's running. It's being piped from 27th all the way down and around. And all I'm thinking is that maybe the pipe's not big enough for the new project.
You should call the drainage district. He's very informative. I'd give him a call because he controls that.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I think we're about through with this one. There was no action taken.
And I had one last question for Keith, if I could. Under the passive system, as we move forward on 8K, what is the life cycle? How many years can you go before you have to do that full kind of close down, clear everything out, rebuild? Is that 5 years, 10, 15, 20, or do you have any guesstimate?
Well, it's hard to say on this one, but because the suspended solids in the canal are so low, I think it would be 20-plus years. Plus, prior to that, we'll have a very deep settling basin, 20 feet or so, and a good size to it. And then after that, there will be a floating plant system with shallow water, and their roots will be hanging down quite a bit into the water surface. So they'll filter out a lot of the solids as it goes down. So I don't imagine it's going to be very often as compared to a system that takes stormwater directly into a man-made wetland, because then the wetland's filtering out everything within itself, and it doesn't have prior removal treatment areas.
Right. I think to come up with the life cycle of the project, if at 25 years you have to completely rebuild it, you have to then factor that in your numbers and your cost per pound to some formula that would have some leeway in it, but you'd have to put that in there somewhere.
That's true. Yeah, Egret Marsh is a sort of a different animal because it's based around old borrow pits where the county dug out for marl for a lot of the roads, and we have 12 or 14 acres. I think it's 12 acres of ponds, but they're 20 feet deep, and they're big, and so they've got years and years. It won't be in our lifetime that they ever need any kind of dredging, and then they just keep the water going into the Woodstort Marsh, which is about 3 acres. Right. It's not pristine drinking water, but it's very clear.
One thing about this site is that given the uplands and the area that we have to work with, we really don't know how fast the muck would build up over time. We're guessing 20, 25 years, and we'd have to clean them out. But given the fact that we have all this room to work with, we feel confident that we'd have the space to pull water lettuce out, to pull out and clean out the flowway over time. And I know one of the reasons why the people at St. John's were so enthused about the grant was that we had this space for recreational trails and other. So that figured into their grant appropriation also.
Hopefully the last words on this one from Commissioner Fletcher.
Yeah, well, Keith, the buoyant plant pod system is periodically and continually adjusted when you have plant loss. So that's why we can't have an exact number of when you plan to have to do a total gut, correct? I mean, you're constantly renewing and replenishing.
Yeah, sort of like at the canal system. A lot of our plants float down on us, but we also trap them when the water's not coming in and let them grow. And we'll just let them grow till a point we think we need to harvest some of them. We'll never harvest all of them because you need to leave some there to seed for reproduction and stuff. But it's real hard to put a number on it as far as the cleaning of the downstream marshes. It's just that most of the settable stuff is going to settle out well before it gets into the wetland system due to the roots and particularly the deep settling pond in front, because the velocity will be so slow that as a particle comes in at the front, if it's at the top of the water column, it's going to be falling down as the water is traveling through the system, and it'll be well below the outfall point, which will be an overflow weir at the tail end of it. So unless something goes in there and really stirs up the bottom, that sediment should stay there due to the slow velocity.
Thanks for all the successes.
Yeah.
And we will move to item 8E.
And, Mr. Chairman, we'll look forward to repackage 14E1 at a future date, and I'll get with you, Keith. Thank you.
On 14E1, Dylan?
Yes.
No, actually, it's on.
Eight-
it's
80.
80, that's right,
8E.
8E.
What happened is, we, in the content of the letter, we've got the address right, but in the heading, we do not. It says the utility, it says the extension for closing on an agreement for the purchase of 2625 54th Street. It should say 54th Avenue. So we just need to make that change.
Move to approve as corrected.
Second.
Motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
10:30, you get through the consent.
We'll move on to constitutional officers and government agencies. Indian River County Supervisor of Elections Leslie Swan requests for revenues collected for conducting an election for the town of Indian River Shores be rolled into the Supervisor of Elections 2015-16 fiscal year budget.
So moved. Approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Davis. Thank you for coming, Ms. Swan.
Thank you very much.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Next up is public hearings, requests for authorization to submit a fiscal year 2016 grant application for 49 USC Chapter 53, Section 5307 Mass Transit Capital Operating Assistance. This is administrative in nature, and we have Mr. Mattson.
Good morning, Phil Mattson, Indian River County MPO. According to federal regulations, we need to conduct a public hearing each year to receive our 5307 funds. And I'll just say this is the largest of the multiple grants that keep the GO line operating. This is both a capital and an operating grant. We've spelled out what the capital needs are in the coming years here in some of the grant detail and some of the grant application budget. It's typical what you'd expect, bus rolling stock, some hardware, software, that sort of thing. One thing that's fairly unique, they allow you to capitalize preventative maintenance and insurance, which you would normally think are operating expenses. The $1.2 million they're requesting from federal operating assistance is matched with $600,000 from FDOT. Our state is unique in that it provides that match. Some states don't. Also $600,000 generously put in by the Board of County Commissioners. And that makes us total operating expense about $2.4 million, which with our 1.2 million riders puts us at just under $2 per passenger operating expense, which is the lowest in the state, which is something I think the SRA and Karen Deagle, who's here today, are to be commended for. They run a great system. We apply for this grant, and we have to as the county because we're the designated recipient, and we do this on behalf of the SRA, who operates the GO line and the community coach transit systems. And the last thing I'll say about this grant, this may not be the amount we actually receive. We typically apply for more than they identify for us in the Federal Register because some cities of our size don't have a bus system or don't have one as big as ours. And they leave some money on the table, and we look to try to get it. If we don't get this full amount, we'll just take it out of the capital side since we obviously need the operating. It's pretty much my presentation. It is a public hearing, and any questions?
Thank you,
Both myself and Ms. Deagle are here.
Any questions of Phil?
Yes, sir.
There being none, I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this matter? Anyone from the public? There being no one from the public who wishes to speak, we will close the public hearing. Gentlemen?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Any question?
One question. Phil, could you identify the boost in ridership numbers when we expanded the hours? And does our grant amount change? Well, I know our ridership went up when we started earlier and ran later. Is that, obviously the additional ridership is helping us ask for additional funds, but do you know specifically what our boost in numbers were?
I want to say about 200,000, and I'll double check and get back with you on that. Does that sound about right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's approximately right, and you're right. The second component of this grant, the DOT side, has directly ridership in the formula allocation.
Right.
So it kind of success builds on itself in this case. The more riders we get, the more grant money they'll apply, so.
And we're eligible to apply for this program until we come to the 2020 census review?
I think we'll go beyond that, luckily. Okay. Yes, the 2020 census review won't be done until 2024 or so.
Right.
So we'll have
We're
this
good for a
favorable
while.
match. Come 2020, a lot can change, but honestly, it looked worse 10 years ago when we had Visions and Indrio and Indrio Grove DRIs right at our border. Cloud Grove, some of the major St. Lucie development abutting our development. Because then the census looks at it from like an aerial photograph perspective. Hey, you guys are all one urbanized area. they could force us to merge, and then we would lose our operating assistance.
Right.
As it turned out, some of that development went away.
And Phil, again, congratulations to you, your staff, Karen, and the senior resources for being the lowest cost per rider in the state of Florida.
Thank you. And I certainly want to point out Brian, who's, you know, prepares this grant, and you can always use Brian as a resource if you need to. He does a wonderful job here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've got the motion from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Move on to community development, condemnation, demolition, and removal of unsafe structures located at 4635 39th Avenue, 2726 47th Place, and 2085 54th Avenue, and 2025 45th Avenue. Good morning, Scott. And eventually Stan.
I joined the mobility challenge.
Let me put on the mic. These structures have been inspected, they've been posted, the owner's notified, and they were given a chance to either rehabilitate or remove them themselves in 60 days. And we've been working on these projects a lot longer than the 60 days. Per the property maintenance code, we've determined these structures to be unsafe and detrimental to the public safety and welfare. The staff recommends that the board declare these structures unsafe and a nuisance and order them demolished. Staff further recommends that the board adopt the attached resolution for the purposes of recovering the county's demolition costs. Just for a note, the first two properties are located in the Gifford Neighborhood Plan area, and we have the goal of taking down at least 10 homes in that area within 2016, and we've met that goal already. Property number 1, owned by Terry Reese Williams. It's 4635 39th Avenue. That's an unsafe single-family dwelling. It's open and unsecure and abandoned. It's open and unsecured at different times. Sometimes the front door's closed, sometimes it's wide open. You'll see
Scott,
that
can
it
you
has-
back up one picture on that? Is there still an electric meter on the west side of the house?
I think there is, but it'll be disconnected and the meter's just in there
Okay,
falsely.
just cocked sideways. Okay.
Yes. So you'll see that there's many broken windows boarded up. We've received multiple complaints, even including gang activity from the sheriff's department. Trash and debris, it's totally trashed on the inside. So we did have this on the agenda a few meetings ago when we actually pulled it. We were trying to promote some other organization to gain possession and possibly rehabilitate it and keep the structure there. That was unsuccessful. We talked to Habitat for Humanities and also Every Dream Has a Price. So we're bringing it back in front of you guys for demolition.
I would imagine there's a utility lien on this.
Yes, there is.
How much is that?
There is a ship mortgage actually for $37,000. So the reason why some of these organizations don't want to take it on as an investment because there's a bunch of risk here. There's a utility lien of a little over $2,500, back taxes from 2014 and 15 to $2,300. So there's a substantial amount of money there. So here you see the door, it's been open, sometimes it's closed, like I said.
Just, what is the plan to get these back on the tax rolls? Or I guess that's not your job, but, I mean, that ought to be, whenever something like this happens, the county should, in my opinion, if we've got to go down this route, we should probably look at trying to protect, or perfect our lien, and then go ahead and then surplus them out, either, like you mentioned, but clearly title's got to get cleaned up somehow.
Right.
And keeping in back of my mind, the things that do not get cleansed are the property taxes and utility liens. Those are super liens in this process, and it kind of goes back to the scenario that I've kind of been harping all along about, that there really not being a way of modifying the lien of the utilities department so that it doesn't supersede or even rise to the level of a real estate tax, ad valorem tax. So.
I would say at this point in time, Commissioner Davis, we don't have an organized method to actually get it out there to get it bought by somebody else. We've had contractors also look at this structure, and because of the investment in the liens and the so forth, the risk, they just weren't willing to take that on.
Mm-hmm. No, I clearly get it.
Would we have to foreclose on the properties and then in order to start that process to bring them back on the market?
It's been the policy of this board not to really go through the foreclosure route, and so if it's a new direction this board wants to go, we can certainly.
No, I mean, because how many, well, I'll ask, how many of these projects where we've demolished the house are now they're basically sitting in limbo?
A high percentage.
Okay, so
95%
let
or so.
me answer some of the process on this. Typically what happens and how we would get title to the property would be through the tax deed process. And the reason for that is if you have somebody that's a savvy investor that is bidding on tax deeds, they're going to go through and they're going to see the lien won't, our demolition lien will not concern them because that will get cleansed in the title process as the application for tax deed happens. But the way we get it is we pay the taxes on it at 18%, which is the highest rate of allowed by law for a tax certificate. 2 years of the tax certificate, and then in the third year, application for tax deed can happen. And that's typically whenever you see where it says Indian River County is applying for the tax deed. And then we get the property, but that doesn't cleanse, then it has to sit on the lands available for a certain period of time. It used to be 7 years, I think now it's down to 3. Is that correct? I don't mean to play lawyer, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night. And so when you look at, then after that, then we can go to the actual sale. And it goes on the lands available. And then after a certain period of time, that's whenever we can actually sell the property for less than the taxes that the county's paid. But through that entire 5-year process, you have the utility lien that does not go away, that's continuing to rack up the assessed penalties, interest, and the base capacity charges.
Mr. Chairman, question for Dylan. Since the SHIP funds are the outstanding mortgage, could SHIP foreclose and do some of the cleansing that way and not have to do the, would that be a shorter process if it wasn't contested?
I think if they no longer live there, then that's in violation of the SHIP loan. That's the traditional method by which they have to live there to have to dive into one of the contracts, but I believe that we'd be able to then move forward from there. But I could examine the contracts closer, but that'd be a way we could get it. It's just, again, it's not been a policy of this board to move forward in closing on or foreclosing on properties historically.
Because if, right now it has some value to somebody, but as soon as we make it a vacant lot, it'll be that way for the next decade.
Well, the value there as a vacant lot is this. It's got the utility impact fees paid, and it's got the impact fee credits that will travel with the land for probably a 1,500 square foot or less house.
Mm-hmm.
So that's approximately about a little more than $10,000 in impact fees that would be running with the land. So that could be a wash, and that does add value, but it doesn't add value until it gets to the point where the market says, listen, this thing's worth that much for somebody to come in there and buy it.
Right.
Okay, Commissioners, property number 2, owned by Lily May Week. And I'll run through a few of these pictures. Again, it's an unsafe single-family dwelling. This structure here is also open unsecure. Major fire damage. You can see these pictures are just of last Friday. And when the fire happened over a year ago, you see that it was probably boarded up at one point in time. Multiple complaints on this property. It's open to vagrants. If we ran through some of the numbers on the other address, I'll just run through these. There's no mortgage on there. We have a utility lien of $213, code enforcement lien of $3,100, and back taxes of about $552. Any questions on that property?
On the utility lien on that, 2013, March of 13 for $213. What do you, I'm just trying to do the math real quick in my head about what it is today, 3 years later. And I guess we wouldn't know that right off the top of our head, but this is just a problem, guys, and we have no policy in place to be able to take care of it.
Well, we'll probably, at some point, want to direct staff to look at it, because this is a growing project, and there may be 2 or 3 ways. If you want to do that today, I think that's fine. I think staff's getting the idea that we've got a lot of these lots out there, and we're getting more and more all the time, because we're working on, it's kind of like the snake, this rat going through the snake. I mean, we've moved the problem down, but the lump is still there. So I think that Dylan's getting the idea that this is an issue, and maybe in the next couple of months he can work through a couple alternative processes. But, you know, if I've got, well, I think that he understands what the problem is.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to work with Community Development Department, and we can come forward with a recommendation of some options that we have to address these issues.
And the utilities.
And the utilities.
I mean, I think the idea is to, how do we get these to be marketable projects, properties as soon as possible?
Correct.
So that we can get them back on the tax rolls and get them useful in the community.
All right, Commissioners, property number 3, address is 2085 54th Avenue, owned by John and Karen Kuhn, another unsafe single-family dwelling. Again, this one here is open and unsecure. You also see that it's basically overgrown. There's roof damage, there's exterior wall damage, interior is trashed, open to vagrants. The site is, like I said, completely overgrown. There's trash and debris throughout the site. And this one here also has received multiple complaints from neighbors.
When you contacted these folks, did they say anything, or just no response?
Well, they've received all the notices, but really no response on stepping up and taking care of it.
Right, okay. And they know this is an impending demolition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr.
DeBrawl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. In the Keene matter, I believe Mr. Keene is currently incarcerated. All of the mail that was sent to the prison was received and signed for. As far as Mrs. Keene is concerned, you know, she's just left the area and the house is abandoned, and has been since for several years.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott?
Property number 4, this is the last one. Property address 2025 45th Avenue, owned by Hecto Bello. Again, unsafe single-family dwelling. This one here is a total fire damage. It's open and unsecure. It's also more overgrown than the last one. Also has an unsafe swimming pool. See some pictures of the interior. Also multiple complaints from neighbors. Just so you know, during the demolition bid or so forth, the pool will go along with it. That'll be demolished. And the pool's also being overgrown.
Do we contact the mortgage holder on these as well, or do they just find out later?
Yes, we do. We notify all the encumbrances.
Yes, by our code, we have to notify anyone that would have an interest in the property.
Okay.
Mortgage, lien holders, even the tax certificate holders get notice of our actions.
Okay.
And just a little note, this has a code enforcement lien of $51,000.
51,000?
Yes. Mortgage of $43,000. Back taxes of $6,000.
Probably underwater.
You think? And again, none of those really concern me as much as just the ad valorem taxes and then the utilities. Everything else has a mechanism through the state statutes of writing itself. So, anyhow.
Anybody from the audience want to speak on any of these properties? Gentlemen?
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we declare all 4 reference structures unsafe and order them to be demolished and adopt the attached resolution. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. And this is a great time to take a 10-minute break. We're going to reconvene the Board of County Commissioners meeting and go to utility services. We've got the St. Johns River Water Management District cost share application for fiscal year 2016-2017. Mr. Burke.
Good morning. For the record, Utilities Director Vincent Burke. We have a one-page agenda that begins on page 213. A little bit of a history here. Staff has talked in some of the department head meetings that there is a grant application that is coming up, the St. Johns River Water Management District cost share grant application. That is due on Friday, April 22nd. But a little bit of history, since October 2014, staff has worked with the commissioners and looked for direction and been given direction by the commissioners to move forward with doing a full design for the septic to sewer project in the northern part of the county, unincorporated part of the county, and parts of the city of Sebastian, having gone to the Friends of Sebastian River, having gone to the City of Sebastian Council, having made some presentation here to the board. But on April 5th of this year, the board authorized staff to move forward with an application to the district, and Keith McCulley talked this morning about how well received it has been by district staff. So myself and Kay Cotner from the Attorney's Office and Arjuna Varagota, who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes, really have a better handle on the pulse of where the district is at this point. And we've had very good conversations with folks like John Julian and Melissa Delaportes, who is on the review committee for the ranking system. But one of the things that came out of the conversations from the district staff with the Attorney's Office and Arjuna is that if you had to pick a priority project, what would that be? So the board has already directed staff, Keith McCulley's office, to do the draft application for that STA, that stormwater treatment area at Osprey Acres, just at the east of Osprey Marsh. But we also thought that the septic to sewer might have some traction based on the investments that the the utilities has made thus far in putting in and obtaining the FDEP permit and obtaining the FDOT permit, and to possibly look at doing a commercial build out where we have some properties that could benefit from the septic tank restrictions that are along US 1. So really, today is just to open up the dialogue, to look at trying to get some board direction. But before I do that, I wanted to just give you a little bit of specifics on the grant application. So it is due this Friday, the 22nd. I know that Keith McCulley has already drafted an application and is working on fine-touching that. Staff has tried to gather some information if we are to submit for the septic to sewer as well for the commercial area, that phase 1. But we know that there's about $25 million available from the district in the next fiscal year. We are told that each applicant can receive up to a maximum of $2.5 million. So regardless of the number of projects available, that $2.5 million threshold is up there. And if you heard Keith McCulley today, he estimated that the 33% of that construction cost, not the project cost, but the construction cost, he's asking for about $1.2 million. If we were to ask for 33% of the septic to sewer cost, that's about $333,000. So in total, if we were to submit 2 applications, it might be a little bit more than that. Okay, so the numbers might be a little bit more, but what we're saying is it's only 33% of that cost that we'd be able to apply for. So,
Vinny, just so, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Davis.
So you're saying because of the stormwater that we're moving forward with, that is where you're talking about, that's already taken away from our ability to get the maximum, or that's counting towards our...
That's counting towards that 2.5 million ask, that maximum ask that an applicant, regardless of the number of projects that can be submitted. And if I can, just to give you a little anecdote, when I went up there for the fiscal year 14-15 project, we had 3 projects that we were asking for. One was from some mixing of the water that Commissioner Solari had mentioned at the wetland treatment system, and some was from another oyster bed project that we were trying to do. And the district kind of said, well, you have 3 kids to save. Which one are you going to choose? And we said, well, all of them, because we think they're great. But at the end of the day, I think that the district is trying to say there's a lot of folks asking for this limited pot of money of $25 million. And we know from the past that not all the funding is available for all these projects. So the district staff is really saying if you had to choose one of these projects, and they're both equally important as far as trying to remove some nutrients, would it be the septic to sewer conversion in the northern part of the county, or perhaps the stormwater treatment area? If you had to pick a priority, in other words, if only one of the 2 projects could be funded, not necessarily to say that they won't be funded, but if they had to pick, we're certainly looking for some direction on how we would
And
kind of rank those.
what are the two amounts again that would be asking for in the grant?
So the two amounts are, according to Keith McCulley, he's looking for $1.2 million for the Osprey Acres. And we would be asking in utilities for about $650,000 for the septic to sewer conversion.
Well, off the top, it sounds like 1.2 would be better than 635, and Keith seemed to indicate that St. John's River Water Management District felt very positive about the stormwater project.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen? Mr. Zook.
Which project is theoretically further along in the permitting process? Isn't this sewer project further along that you could go for the full 2.5 for this one this year, and then the other portion, get it designed, get it ready to go, sort of shovel ready? And then are these annual grants that they traditionally churn out each? When do they usually pop up on their radar?
Of course, their funding is contingent upon what they're able to be allocate on a yearly basis, but that's part of the legislative process that they can get some of the funding. So we know several months, I think, in advance of what the potential funding would be, but certainly at the end of the day, we get a better feel for that in March time period.
Right. So let's say if the last 3 years has the number been plus or minus 10% each year, I'd rather go with the one that I want to do them both, but when you look at which one's further ahead, you could actually start sooner is the sewer project.
The septic to sewer, yes. As I said, we have the FDEP permit, which is good for 5 years. We've also reached out to FDOT and have that permit as well for that commercial area, where we'd be building a gravity sewer system to run along the east side of US 1 to pick up all that, all those potential customers.
I'm going to have to go with Commissioner Zork on this one. I think that we're not putting ourselves where we can't do the Osprey next year. I think we ought to swing for the bleachers in trying to get some of these septics off of our riverfront. But it's also economic development due to lowering the barriers for this commercial property right there in the breadbasket, if you will, of Sebastian. And more importantly, this is something that the city of Sebastian cannot do for themselves. This is something, because it's county utilities, we are, the burden is on us, and this is ready to go. My question is to you, Benny, are they looking favorable at helping communities with septic?
I'm actually going to answer that one if you don't mind. Sure. I actually joined the meeting with St. John's, and they looked favorable on both projects. They were excited about both projects. Okay. Obviously, septic to sewer is something that they're very concerned about and passionate about. Okay. They were very excited, to just piggyback on the earlier conversation, they were very excited about the Osprey Acres because of the nature element. They were preserving uplands and potentially wetlands, as well as the educational aspect of it. So they liked both.
Like both, okay.
And just so the commissioner know, we do have a cost share grant already for the West Wabasso area, which is another great project that we're doing exactly the same thing, septic to sewer as well, just in a little bit of an economically depressed area. So the district already has supported us, and Arjuna is working closely with Melissa for the updated documents that are required as part of that grant.
Commissioner Fletcher.
You know, all of our marsh projects have been successful, as we talked about. And I just have to ask, all right, I am putting you on the spot. Which of these projects has the most verifiable, authenticatable benefit, immediate benefit, or long-range benefit to the community? I understand, but I'm looking at the value of the likelihood of leaching into the lagoon as opposed to the type of projects that we have in place and the amount of reduction that's been verified that we can see. And, we can't see now because the lights have gone, but we still know that those nutrients are coming out of the lagoon.
Yep.
Or outfalls. How's that for a segue?
Do we still have?
Should we stop because I can't record? And
I think that's God saying do sewer.
There's been some messages that people would like evening meetings.
Could be God saying you're in the dark, but we won't go there.
So if I understand the question, I think if we had to see which one would have the more tangible benefit, if you will.
Which child do you like better?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm going to get a little
I'm sorry.
philosophical. I think there's many paths to the top of the mountain. It just depends on which path you take. And in this case, I think the county has done a great job in removing the nutrients once they're in the waterway. The septic to sewer, in my opinion, is a great project because it removed those nutrients prior to getting into the waterway. And we've had some issues up in the North County where the water table is high, and we've had some backups. And in fact, we've had some dosing mounds where people have had to actually build mounds higher than the water table to get the separation as required by the Department of Health, which is one of the reasons why we chose that area. So I think that we've had good success. We've had tangible success with the removal of those scrubber type systems. I think the stormwater treatment project is a great project for all the reasons that staff likes it here and up at the district as well. But certainly, I think that the commission has invested a lot of time and effort and directed staff to keep moving on the septic to sewer. And certainly, we'd like to, not only for the economic benefits that we've had folks from the car washes contacting us, when are we going to get this going?
The RV
to certainly
dealers, the RV
have some
place
traction
up
to try
there.
to move forward.
Any
So,
more
you
RV?
know, being a little biased, we in the utility worlds are obviously in favor of a gravity system
So,
to help
so
some
Vinny,
of
why
those
don't you use some
properties.
numbers, though? How many septic tanks could you hook up to the sewer system in this project?
So we have right now on about 60 or 61 parcels, about 35 or so existing structures. Some are multiple units that are in that area, just not specific single-family homes. It is the commercial district. And then we do have some vacant parcels of a potential 295 ERUs that would connect if we had a system in place. I know that the Technical Review Committee has had many folks contact our utility department to find out about water and sewer. Potential investors that have been turned away because there's no existing infrastructure that's in place. So you can't build a restaurant.
And you can't assume all those sewer people are going to hook up because we don't do mandatory sewer hookup. So don't forget that. So you're not going to get those values. And also, as we talk about money, I know that everyone gets concerned when a small businessman comes in here and he has to pay impact fees, and you say, well, we've got to work with them. So a lot of times they don't hook up. So I have I think the utility one's good for economic development in Sebastian. I think the stormwater one, they seem very excited, you're going to get twice the money. So that's a decision the commission has to be. They're very, you'll get twice as much because the project's twice as much.
Well, the other thing is, with 35 to so septic tanks, you're talking about removing maybe 350 to 700 pounds of nitrogen. 700 would be tops, versus 2,000 to 5,000 pounds at the Osprey Marsh. But you don't have the economic development portion to it. So,
Yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
can't, unfortunately, this is one of
Right.
those we can't get apples to apples.
Yeah.
With that,
Again, but Vinny, thank
Commissioner
you.
O'Brien hasn't weighed in yet, so I'll see if he has anything to say.
Thank you. Where I'm kind of leaning is, to me, what's more critical of moving the economic development forward in Sebastian or the lagoon, and I fully understand the economic development impact, but I think the lagoon is still in a crisis mode, and that, as you mentioned, with only 35 existing septics, removing that would be good, but it's nowhere near the bang of the buck we can get by further treatment of the South Relief Canal water. So I would be more inclined to move forward with the, and are we officially calling it Osprey Acres now? What happened to Coyote Run? I kind of like that. But
Some people in the audience didn't like it.
one person.
Well, she's right there.
Yeah, I know Debbie didn't like it, but I think it gives it a little pizzazz.
Debbie, we heard you.
But anyway, so, and I'd hate, if we make the 650,000 sewer project a priority, we're leaving 1.9 million on the table that we may not get, and I'd hate to miss out on maximizing what we can in this cycle. So
Is that all if we put the sewer project first, we're only going to ask for 600,000?
That's the 33% of the first phase of that project. So that's the maximum that the grant will allow us to be able to apply for.
Mr. Jim.
Commissioner, question.
Vinny returned back to which child I would like to prefer most, and I appreciate that. I know it's a difficult question, but you know what? I see more result in the Marsh project, far more result in the Marsh project. And, I have to say that it's even tougher of a decision when billions of gallons of nutrients are being dumped into the lagoon from Lake Okeechobee. But we have to do what we have to do, and we have a greater benefit and a greater good for the community and our citizens by grasping for the most response for a reduction, and that has to be with the marsh projects.
Chairman?
Commissioner Zork.
We just spent $12 million building Osprey Marsh. And now to clean the water that we just spent $12 million on to clean, we're going to spend another $2 or $3 million to clean the water that we spent $12 million to clean. Is that kind of summing it up in the right context? Because we're cleaning the discharge water from Osprey Marsh that we just spent $12 million to clean. And I've got people that are asking me, why are we spending money to clean the water we just spent $12 million to clean? And I know that's more probably different hats at the podium.
Remember, a lot of that is to dilute the.
Oh, I know, it's the RO brine.
But it's because there are two types of nitrogen.
Right.
There's the organic and the inorganic.
Right.
And the algal turf scrubber only really works well on one,
Right.
and the passive system works well on the other. Egret Marsh has shown that to be true. So Egret Marsh with the passive system reduces the other 40% or 45%, which gets us up to the 90%, so 95%. So that's why. So, and again, the Osprey Marsh was not initiated because it was a TMDL project. It was initiated because DEP said we could no longer discharge directly into the lagoon. So we got the extra boost. So the $12 million was not for just the TMDL remediation. The bigger portion of it was for the brine problem, which would have eventually shut down our water plant. So that's why. But again, it doesn't matter how much you spent on the one as opposed to the other. If the question is, which one gives you the biggest bang for the buck for removing nutrients? And that's going to, from everything our projects have shown, it'd be the Osprey acres.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to go ahead and make a motion that we rank Osprey Acres, AKA Coyote Run, as our #1.
Wolf's Pond.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Flesher.
One last question, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman.
This would be directed at Public Works. Since we don't have a permit in hand, will it take 6 to 9 months to get a permit, which puts you in line for the funding cycle of this grant opportunity next year? In other words, we'd be getting the money and we can't spend it until we actually have engineering, permitting, and all that. So the money's just going to sort of sit there, where the other one you could use it.
Well,
next week.
Keith McCulley with Public Works. I didn't bring my time schedule with me, but we had a accelerated schedule we were going to try to hit, and then the normal schedule. And under either one, Kate has, I guess, I can't read it, it's so small. But in either one, we were able to be under construction or have the project bid and start construction before June of 2017 or July 2017, whichever one it was. That's the cutoff date for being eligible for the grant, is being under construction by, was it July or June of 2017?
So you really would have ample time for
Yes.
the next year's cycle and not give up any ground and still meet that timeline. That's why I'm leaning more towards the sewer, because that's ready to go. This one, we would still meet the timeline and the next year's grant window before, if you used April of next year, you'd still be 4 months ahead of the under construction window, if I'm doing the timeline right.
Yeah, I suppose that's assuming money is going to be available next year.
Well, in the last 5 years, was there money available each year?
Yes, but it varied.
Right.
I mean, we have a very healthy pot this time with $25
Right.
million, and folks are very excited about it. They're expecting a lot of applications, which is why we're requesting priority. But it depends on appropriations. There are other priorities for the incoming leadership.
And the other issue is, how many, Mr. Burke, when you get the lines in and operable in Sebastian, how many septic tanks can you guarantee will convert?
Well, again, we don't have a mandatory connection
How many
policy.
septic tanks can you guarantee will convert?
We can guarantee only the ones that failed with the Department of Health, work in conjunction with utilities. But our hope is that we get it 100% connection, but I can't guarantee that.
Well, yeah, I
With-
mean,
with
hope
the
over
voluntary
experience
connection.
doesn't usually work too well. So, I mean, basically, we're talking probably about a handful of septic tanks that'll be converted in the first year anyway. as opposed to a project which will probably immediately start taking out hundreds of pounds of nitrogen a month. Well, I think we're about beat this horse. We have a motion on the table from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher.
I think we have people out that have been here that may want to comment on this, Carter.
Anybody else from the audience want to speak?
Carter, which one you want us to do?
Good morning. My name is Carter Taylor. I live at 2235 Silver Sands Court in Indian River County. And I am chairman of the Land Use Committee for the IRNA, and I'm on the Lagoon Committee of IRNA. And one of my favorite topics, as you know, is septic to sewer. And I just have a couple of pieces of advice that I'd like to offer. The first thing is, when evaluating the contribution of nitrogen removal from septic tanks, please bear in mind that not all properties are valued the same. Some properties pollute a lot more than others, as we've seen from the Arkinlet study. There are some properties that can be prioritized where the cost per pound is considerably lower than others. And in our evaluation, the cost per pound is very competitive in some cases with these larger water projects. The larger water projects are efficient, they're cost efficient. However, there are a limited number of these large water project opportunities, whereas in the case of septic to sewer, you can take a more systematic approach by stopping the effluent at its source, which is almost always going to be less expensive than after it gets loose into the environment. The second thing I would urge you to consider, and this possibly relates to Commissioner Zork's matters that come later, when considering the cost of these water projects, you really should consider the opportunity cost as well of the large amount of land that's consumed in the process. That land is now committed for a long period of time without the possibility of any development. Therefore, you have foregone not only the current market value of the land or the stream of rents that might come from that land, but you've also foregone all the future tax receipts from the development of that land that would otherwise occur. And in looking at the opportunity cost and therefore the total cost per pound of nitrogen reduction, you really should be looking at the present value of that opportunity cost. One final point is that, and I think I've forgotten what my final point was. That's what I get for being over 50. I may think of it. I may remember it later and come back to you. It's just gone out of my head.
Thank you.
So are you're saying the sewer projects, or you think we ought to do the Osprey project? We do
Yes,
both, but
you've
we're
now
not.
reminded me of my point. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Burke is, I believe, recommending this project. There's certainly nobody in this room that knows more about it than he does. I would weight very highly his recommendation, especially if it becomes bundled with the opportunity to receive grant money that defrays a great deal of the cost. I'm not sure why you wouldn't do that in advancing the septic to sewer program, which I think is going to become a more formal program. And to Mr. Baird's point, and I think this is critical, looking at the first 1 or 2 years of voluntary connection rates is not really the standard that you should be looking at. As you know, under current state law, which is subject to administrative reinterpretation, but at present it's interpreted to mean when service is available, the connection requirement is mandatory upon notification by the county. This is state law. And here, our county policy does not adhere closely to the state law requirements. I've discussed this with Mr. Reingold, but it's important to note that it's not whether they connect voluntarily in the next year or two. The question is, what is the present value of the future revenue stream once mandatory connections do come into force, which I think eventually they will in conformance with state law. If that's 3 or 4 years out, you've foregone 3 or 4 years worth of revenue, but you haven't foregone 30 years worth of revenue. So I urge you to consider that when any River County policy comes into conformance with state laws, that you will receive revenue and you will compel connections to those locations where service is available, and it will be revenue, but perhaps not in the first 2 or 3 years while we're sorting out our policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2. Commissioners Davis and Zork voting against.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just out of pure curiosity, Kate, okay, so the St. John's asked the county to make a decision to prioritize. Would it be, could the city of Sebastian make a decision to request funding for the sewer? Or is that kind of circumventing really what they're asking us to do? You understand? I mean, they're totally another entity, but and I'm just wondering now if what kind of a process now can they request those funds and go for the full 600,000?
I mean, I would assume that they would be allowed to do that. We can apply for both. I mean, I don't think that it's one entity can receive multiple grants. And actually, I believe they told us that one entity or one community received 3 grants last year. So it is possible. They might have been a lower request, but the city of Sebastian could put in an application, but I don't think that it would make any difference whether the county does it or the city of Sebastian.
Okay.
But we could
But we should still
It's
put in
based
both.
on the-
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
Okay.
Sure, we could suggest
And
it-
I don't know whether there's a way, though, of making the city of Sebastian the lead applicant, if you will, like the county is the lead applicant for what we're doing down south.
We could certainly reach out to them if you want to direct staff to do that. I mean, it's really, just so you guys understand, it's really based on a score. So they go through and they tally up different things. So it doesn't matter necessarily who the applicant is. I don't think the score is going to be higher if the applicant is the county or Sebastian, but maybe, Denny, do you?
I don't know how you could have Sebastian as a lead. They're not putting up the match.
Right.
They can't vote to put up the match, so I don't know how you do that.
Okay.
They've already said for our utilities, they wouldn't put up the match even to their economic redevelopment.
I'd like to look into that, just to see. I mean,
conversation.
it may be more, cosmetic than it is anything else as far as who's, but if it would make a difference because it is at the request of a municipality that's other than the one that's making 2 requests as the county, it might be something that might give us just enough edge to be able to get it accomplished. Maybe, I don't know.
That could be seconded real quick.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I haven't been privy to the conversations with City of Sebastian, so I'll just put that disclaimer
Sure.
out there.
No, that's fine, but I think you understand, basically, we've been asked to make a decision here, that we did. We're gonna move and request, as a county, our first priority is gonna be the Osprey project. Second will be the utilities, but perhaps asking the district, listen, if we get some formal codification by the city of Sebastian that this is the project that they would like to move forward as a community, would that give the project more standing? And would it alleviate some of the concerns as far as having it in second place for Indian River County?
We'll certainly reach out to them.
That's my motion.
I think that's understandable. We have the motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. Any other discussion?
Yes. Vinny, on the grant cap, is that per county or is it per entity
Per
within
applicant.
the county? Per
It was told
applicant.
to me it was per applicant, yes.
And do you think that they're going to look at, since the city of Sebastian is not in the water and sewer business, that they're really going to look at that? I guess we won't know till we ask them.
See, to me, that should bolster their request, because they're not. They cannot help themselves in this. Well,
Then they would get the grant and have to give it.
Sure, that's fine.
Or pledge it to the project.
Or after a discussion with St. John's, as they figure out which is the best way to package the grant, I think that the motion includes the idea that the Indian River County should direct its staff to work with both the St. John's and the
city.
Sebastian to package it in the way which will increase the probability of success.
Right, but we would still be the lead agency, or the lead applicant, because we are the ones putting the matching funds. I mean, Mr. Baird was absolutely on point about that.
I guess the only other issue I've got from a timing perspective is the grants, the applications are due when?
Friday.
Friday this week. All right, I don't know how we.
Well, it makes it tough.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
What are you doing sitting here?
Vinny, you've got this week's challenge.
Well,
Loves the challenge.
I think we could get a letter from Sebastian Council endorsing this project too. That's another.
Only if they meet tomorrow.
I don't know if they might have a scheduled meeting tomorrow.
I can tell you, it's on my calendar.
Okay.
We will find out.
That's my motion.
Well, we've got the motion and the second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
And they do have a meeting.
Or, I don't know if we know yet.
I can, it's on my calendar. Let me pull it up.
We'll move to county attorney matters, all aboard Florida Army Corps of Engineers permits. Kate.
Hello, for the record, Kate Cotner, Assistant County Attorney. I wanted to make everyone aware that the Army Corps of Engineers application is moving again. They issued on April 11th of 2016, they issued a public notice requesting the public and all interested parties to submit comments within 21 days, and that gives us until May 2nd. We, as the county, are going to request a 30-day extension, and that is pursuant to the federal regulations. There really doesn't appear to be a longer time frame we can ask for. We also are going to request for a public hearing on the matter. Even though this application, they had a public notice that they issued back in October of 2014, and we did make comments on that. At that time, we made the same comments. They were very in line with the comments to the draft environmental impact statement. So as you know, a lot has changed since 2014. We know a lot more. We also don't know a lot because we don't have our 90% plans or our stormwater plans. So we're at a disadvantage, but we're expecting those any day. We've been told that those plans are with, excuse me?
Which year?
Yes, very true. We've been told that the plans are ready to be sent to us, but they're just waiting on permission from the Federal Railroad Administration to be able to hand them to us. So 30 days will hopefully give us some time to receive those plans, analyze them, and get some comments in order. So we just wanted to make the public aware and the board aware that this is going on.
Kate, I was quickly researching the City of Sebastian issue, but did you mention about the public hearing issue?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
You know, I think what we ought to do is we ought to request that they extend it. I understand Representative Mayfield is working on trying to get the comment period extended.
We appreciate the help of anybody. Obviously, it's the Army Corps, so it's a federal agency versus Mayfield. But obviously, we'd support, and actually, we are reaching out with our counterparts with other cities and other counties to also, and also we'll be reaching out to our federal representatives to do that as well, to request the extension.
I think we ought to do that formally here today, and I'll make a motion that we join that effort in asking them to extend it.
Second. Motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion by the board members? Anybody from the audience? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
And she was, in that date, I forget, I read it in her letter, but I don't remember the date that she was requesting it to be extended by.
Oh, May 2nd is the date that they're currently due, and we were requesting that it be extended by 30 days.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that be in the resolution, or however we need to, I don't know.
Well, I think Kate's already drafted up a letter that we plan to submit to the Army Corps of Engineers. Later today, actually, we were intending to already submit that.
They ought to be happy. I mean, we're asking the government agency to slow down.
One other issue on this item I at least want to mention, we received on Friday afternoon from the Indian River County received a letter that had been delivered from the FRA to Congressman Posey, and it concerned the All-Board Florida project. The letter actually contained a December 2015 letter from FRA to All-Board Florida concerning the design plans for the railroad crossings. And I want to thank Congressman Posey and also CARE FL for all of their efforts in obtaining this letter. I know Kate has been working for 4 months to get a copy of this letter. And before I kind of go into the details of what this letter says, I just kind of want to give a backdrop as kind of why the letter is so significant. Back in August of last year, at the FDFC hearing in Orlando, Michael Reininger made some very specific comments about safety issues regarding the All-Board Florida project. And specifically, he stated, "The infrastructure improvements we are adding to the entire corridor will bring our system to compliance with the highest applicable safety and regulatory standards in existence. And that will make us the only rail corridor in the United States that will be in compliance with all of these highest of standards, and therefore we believe the states." This was a direct quote as provided by All Aboard Florida at that hearing. At a board meeting later that month, I raised some issues of concern relating to some of these safety issues. And specifically at that time, I addressed issues relating to the consultant safety study we had done, And our consultant had determined that the risks could be mitigated and would be mitigated through various measures, including positive train control and safety improvements that would rise to the level of meeting the quiet zone standards. At that time, it was unclear whether All Aboard Florida was going to actually implement all of the safety standards and requirements in Indian River County. Indian River County hadn't at that time received the 90% plans. As we know, we still haven't received the 90% plans. But as George Gavala, a consultant representing St. Lucie County and Martin County, and now we've brought on board that represent us, he articulated at that time he did not believe the plans were necessary to make our community safe. After having that discussion at a board meeting here, I received a threatening letter from counsel from All Aboard Florida in which it was stated, your false statements about FEC's safety record and All Aboard Florida's integrity constitute defamation per se. I sent a letter back to the council explaining my position as well as the position of the board. And in response, I received another threatening, actually this time a threatening email. And it was specifically stated, your letter only serves to demonstrate the extent to which you are willing to manipulate the facts to suit your purposes. You should rethink your approach here. Florida Statute 768.295 provides no protection for defamation and tortious interference, much less violations of the anti-fraud provisions of federal and state securities laws. Indeed, it is hard to imagine how a county attorney could seriously suggest otherwise. And now it is April 2016, and we finally have our hands on the All Aboard Florida letter that was issued in December of 2016. And I'd like to walk through that.
December 2015?
15, thank you. FRA has completed its review of the submitted design plans, worksheets, and technical memorandum. FRA has determined that the highway rail grade crossing plans submitted by All Aboard Florida, or AAF in the memo, do not conform to the highway rail grade crossing treatments in the FEIS. The FRA did admit that, but it agreed with some of the All Aboard Florida's treatments as discussed below. We also disagree with AAF's assertion that AAF's alternatives comply with FRA's sealed corridor guidelines. And attached to that level was a very interesting memo which kind of got into more specifics. And on highway traffic signal systems, direct quote from the FRA, with respect to crossings located near highway intersections with paralleling roadways, AAF contends, roadway traffic signalization in conjunction with railroad preemption is an innovative strategy to achieve the stated goals of the highway rail grade crossing guidelines for high-speed passenger rail published by the FRA for speeds 80 miles mph or greater. On this point, FRA unequivocally disagrees. All Aboard Florida never mentioned this proposal to the diagnostic team during the on-site diagnostic field assessments that took place in 2014. Later on, AAF assumes that motorists will recognize and obey the traffic signals. However, a review of the highway rail grade crossing accident data for Florida East Coast Railway's main line where AAF will operate indicates that some crossings already equipped with traffic signals and preemption are among the crossings with the highest number of accidents. With respect to vehicle presence detection, as stated in the memo from FRA, with respect to vehicle presence detection, VPD, the FEIS calls for a VPD technology that is connected to the train control system at approximately 101 AAF high-speed rail grade crossing locations. AAF states FEC's current practice is to not accept FVP due to concerns about reliability, particularly given the frequency of lightning strikes in Florida. Therefore, AAF proposes not to install VPD at any of those respective locations. Rather, AAF proposes to delay the descent of the exit gates to mitigate against hazard of motor vehicles becoming stopped or stalled on the tracks. FRA categorically disagrees with AAF's approach regarding this issue. And finally, one last item I would like to mention is about pedestrian gates. The FEIS requires the installation of separate pedestrian gates at locations where an exit gate is adjacent to a sidewalk and the separate pedestrian gate is to lower simultaneously with the entrance gates. At every 3 to 4 quadrant gate locations, AF proposes to use the vehicular exit gate to include the sidewalk and roadway together in lieu of a separate pedestrian gate. FRA objects to this change from the FEIS because it poses significant safety risk when the exit gates are delayed by giving a pedestrian the opportunity to proceed into the crossing before the exit gates descend. Those were contained in the letters from the FRA to All Aboard Florida in December of 2016. 15, I keep messing that up. Now, I will state that the letter to Bill Posey, or Congressman Posey, just last week that we finally got a hold of, acknowledges that FRA's response to AF, which was included, that includes a detailed explanation as to why AF's design plans failed to meet FRA's safety guidelines. It does state, since the correspondence was transmitted, All Aboard Florida has taken corrective actions and resubmitted grade crossing designs for Palm Beach, Martin, and St. Lucie counties that meet FRA's safety requirements. FRA is also reviewing resubmitted designs for crossings in Indian River County and Brevard counties and expects to bring any outstanding issues to resolution in the near future. However, I will add, Indian River County, as I noted, does not have its 90% plans, has no way to confirm, check, or understand whether these statements are true. None of these statements have anything to do with fencing along the right-of-way, which protects our pedestrians, and it still leads to the fact that we will be paying, and the public will be paying, for all safety improvements required. I just wanted to make sure it was very clear on the record the history of the correspondence about safety issues between this board, All Aboard Florida, and the FRA. And thank you for the opportunity to address that issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reingold. And I'd like to underscore something. I mean, there are a lot of people who go around thinking or saying that this is both a done deal and that we need to address safety concerns as we, at the same time, we fight this project. So I just want to shout out to all the done dealers and the Rich Campbells out there who believe that we need to prepare for this benighted train, that in case it might come. Please understand, and Mr. Reingold's work underscores this, that our efforts to stop the train are at the same time making it a safer project. And I don't believe that if we didn't have our 2-year fight against this train, that FRA would have actually taken up this and done what I understand it hasn't done before, is actually look at the 90% plans for Indian River County and Brevard County prior to issuing them to the counties. So because of all our efforts, the memo that Mr. Reingold was referring to lists at least 6 significant safety measures that will be incorporated in the 90% plans before we get them. So we will be getting a set of 90% plans which are significantly safer than we would have gotten but for the efforts of our legal department, our grassroots groups, and our commissioners. So we've already significantly increased the safety of this project. Just shedding the sunshine on this project has caused All Aboard Florida time and time again to basically do the right thing. And everything that Mr. Reingold was saying reminds me of an article Michael Reininger wrote in, I believe it was July of 2014, when he stated, "Safety is our unwavering first priority." Now, they would never have an adult conversation about safety, but they can go on and say, "Safety is our unwavering first priority." Well, the Florida Railroad Administration, Federal Railroad Administration clearly believes that they weren't really telling the truth when they said that. So I just wanted to get that out. Thanks,
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
I just want to say to our legal department, outstanding job on that. I mean, that was
absolutely.
You can't just whitewash that, and that was outstanding work. Very nice.
Actually, I want to thank Kate and also Martin County and KRFL and Congressman Posey. Everyone was working so hard to try to obtain this information that we knew was out there, and I just thank everybody for all of their efforts.
Outstanding work. Absolutely outstanding.
Commissioner Zorn.
Yes, any thoughts of sending a copy of that letter to Mr. Stearns to see what he thinks about it?
All Aboard Florida has a copy of the letter.
That's right, they had it all along. Also on the All Aboard Florida topic, I attended with County Attorney Dylan Reingold the hearing in Tallahassee Friday that I, as a court observer, felt it was Dylan on the left and a team of All Aboard Florida attorneys and the FDFC attorney on the right, as well as a backup of 3 to 5 people for All Aboard Florida. So they in my opinion, made a weak case on some of their points, especially the Senate confirmation requirement of the 3 voting members. I think they just kind of glossed over it, that just this past session that ended a few weeks ago, they were recently confirmed, 18 months or so after the vote of the $1.7 billion bond. I think that's a kind of a really big issue, and I think the judge cued in on that. But what else would you like to add? There's a follow-up, I think on May 7th, some information is going to go forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Zark. As Commissioner Zark stated, we had a hearing on our petition for writ of certiorari in Tallahassee. The judge took in the arguments from both sides, complimented, I think, all the attorneys involved, and he requested proposed orders to be submitted to the court by May 6th. So there was no ruling at the time, and he will be waiting for those orders to be submitted to the court, and then from there we'll make his ruling.
Thank you.
And actually, I want to thank the Martin County attorneys. Actually, were there as well, monitoring. They have a similar petition filed in court as we do, so they were very interested to understand what happened in terms of the questions and the arguments, and they've offered to provide whatever assistance possible to help us in providing the proposed order to the court.
And last question on it. It seemed perplexing that the FDFC attorney allowed Mr. Stearns to make the majority of their agency's points for them, instead of them arguing on the merits of that they were legal, that they didn't, because I don't think that they were, so it's hard to argue. But it was when the judge asked the attorney for FDFC to go forward, she said, no, let's have Mr. Stearns go forward, and he basically covered him, became a non-compensated attorney for FDFC, I'd say, because when it was over, she didn't have much to add.
Yeah, I mean,
very little.
It's always the discretion of the agency and the applicant to kind of figure out where they want to put their resources and who goes first. I can tell you in my circumstances that I've had in several oral arguments in front of the First District Court of Appeals and in Circuit Court, I've always vigorously supported the decision of my board, regardless of whether the applicant was in the room or was also preparing a statement.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate and Dylan.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now, if I got the opening minutes of this meeting correctly, you got your item on the agenda?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. The floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you. Mike, did you distribute that information yet, please? Subsequent to the opening remarks, around 10 o'clock this morning, Mr. Zito received an email from Jason Atwell, the CEO of the company that we were discussing. And I'd like to go ahead and read that into the record. It states, Indian River County, speaking from all of the AAG family and partners, we want to thank you for your time and consideration. After hearing the opening remarks about our proposal, we had the opportunity to discuss the options with our partners. After careful consideration, we have decided to open an office in both prospective locations for 1 year and choose our new permanent home on the following: development opportunities, government partnerships, local revenue, quality of life for staff. Our partners urging us to the north have pledged to back us in whatever decision we make and accept our new direction. Words on paper and pretty pictures are just that. We believe in our company and our people. I would like to state that we were not asking for any taxpayer dollars at all. Our company started with our many partners owning their individual companies, some in their basements and some in storage units. However, each leader that is now part of the AAG family started by wiping cables and sweeping floors. We believe in sweat and dedication, as well as trust and loyalty. Trust is earned, and we believe that. You have been sent letters by multiple government officials stating our dedication to community, family, and economic impact. You will also see that none of those individuals stated that we asked for anything but partnership. Please remove our proposal from your agenda for now. Once our company has planted roots and gained your trust and respect through our hard work and dedication, we would ask you to please re-engage when you feel appropriate. We look forward to working beside you in the near future. Sincerely, Jason Atwell, CEO, Apex Audio Group, LLC, AAG Brands. And while it may sound a little positive on the first blush. I take this as a major shot. You know, if we want to be a county that's open for business, we sure just blew it. We've now opened up an opportunity for a competing city to have them there, basically wine and dine them, recruit them, and I think this is a huge missed opportunity. Well, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go ahead and remove my item from the agenda then per their request.
Thank you very much. Next item is Commissioner Tim Zork, discussion of private-public partnership for specific site.
Yes, and before I get into the specific site portion of it, I wanted to review back when we purchased the property and making sure my concept of a private-public partnership is the same as what others here on the dais think. When we moved forward with the purchase of the property, it was moved specifically with discussions with interested parties on a private-public partnership. My concept of a private-public partnership would be where the property would be jointly developed, part by the government side, part by the public portion, thus a private-public partnership. At that time, I was not aware, but I think it's very suitable, it can be easily followed, that there's actually a statute on the Florida records for private-public partnerships. So at that meeting, that was added, and I think Commissioner O'Brien clearly stated this is going to be moving pretty quickly. If they want to come in and talk with staff, it needs to be sooner rather than later. I passed that information on to the engineer that had contacted me. We subsequently had our meeting 2 weeks ago where we moved the preliminary funding forward for the project, and again, it was added with the private-public partnership. But before we talk the specifics about this, when I use private-public partnership, what were the other commissioners thought? What did you think a private-public partnership was? Was it private paying for part of the park, or was it private to be used for a private endeavor? And that will help me understand what your understanding was.
I'll be glad to go. Looking through the minutes you provided in the backup, Commissioner Zork, one of the things were that you had mentioned there are emerging technologies for water treatment, some of which were discussed at the symposium. And then kind of going along with your current agenda request, the RFP for nutrient removal systems with a private company, I was just thinking it was going to be a private company that might help with the water treatment.
Okay,
so
I got you.
That's kind of how I interpreted the whole public-private thing. That, what was the name of that one firm?
Aqua Fiber.
Okay. Kind of in my mind, I was thinking, okay, Aqua Fiber would come in.
I see.
And as part of the Osprey Acres project, a fee or contribution or something we'd work out, and they would also, treat some of that water.
Gotcha.
That was kind of what my impression.
Okay, and fair enough, in my thinking, you're thinking different, but I clearly see where you came with yours.
And for me, public-private partnerships run along a continuum, and the ones I like the best are the public-private partnerships that work for the benefit of the public. The best example of that, I think, is the one that comes most immediately to mind to me is the Indian River Land Trust and the Indian River Lagoon. That one. I mean, that one took some government properties and private properties at that point, land trust properties, joined them together in a public-private partnership for the benefit of the public. And I thought that is tremendous. Just a little bit further along on the continuum are the type of projects we have with the lacrosse, the soccer, and the ball fields. And those generally support. But the further I go along the continuum, the weaker the support goes.
Right.
So I'm looking for one, though, that the overwhelming benefits are for the public.
Right.
And if we can design it in some way that the private sector benefits on the margin, that's good.
Right.
So
with those sort of differing of my opinion to your opinion, I'm not going to pursue this further, but what I would like to say, obviously in a private-public partnership, a portion of the property stays in a taxable entity, has property tax revenues over time. If we look to in the future of when we built Sand Ridge Golf Course, if we were thinking one step ahead of where we were, which was much further ahead than many other communities, that when you buy a chunk of acreage, you create incredible value for the property owner next door that we, on Sandridge, didn't capitalize on at all. So in the future, if we ever look at a golf course or another preserve area, you can really recoup a significant portion of your cost if the site's available, you can buy a little extra, then you just put that up for sale to the public market and say, we've got 10 acres that fronts our new golf course somewhere, goes to the highest bidder. You would, because the value you're creating with the asset, you're creating a lot of residual value with the property next door, and to try to capitalize on that. On this one particular example, where a portion of it could be developed, the serpentine canal or stream system could be put in, but you could have picked up potentially $1 million in private dollars to develop it, to use to put homes on that would front that nice feature, as well as 10 years of property taxes at another $1 million. So you had $2 million in a 10-year window that maybe potentially could have been grasped. But I'd say in the future, if an opportunity comes up, I'll be more clear and specific, reach out with Dylan and get the better understanding of the private-public guidelines, because this kind of came up relatively quickly. To follow the statute, we would have had to start the discussion before the purchase price act or the transaction actually closed.
Right.
So with that, that'll end the discussion on this one. When I bring back the 14E1 item, that may or may not, now that that's going forward, may or may not be a viable option, but I would let those folks know as we're working through the design over the next 6 months if there's a couple of acres that potentially, if this flushes out into something, that, if there's a footprint that's needed to do something on that site. But I'll be more, when I use the word private-public, my assumption is everybody's thinking on the same line, and in this case we weren't, but I appreciate both of your sharing of what your thoughts were, and I'll make sure I'll keep those in mind the next time that comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to special districts and boards. Solid Waste Disposal District.
Move approval of the minutes of March 1st and March 8th, 2016.
The motion to approve both sets of minutes from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We now move on to the quarterly recycling update. Good morning.
Boy, you're squeaky close, not being able to say
Hey,
that any longer.
I made it.
Not yet.
Oh, I made it for the good morning portion. I'm done.
Might be good afternoon when she's finished.
You're the last good morning.
We had
I've
it.
just broken it, so this is a good start so far. All right. Okay. I don't see the clicker, so I will actually sit today, which is going to be very new.
Oh, microphone?
Microphone's on.
Is the green light on? There you go.
Testing, testing. Did this
Maybe bring it a little closer to you, Stephanie.
Man, it's exciting to sit down. All right, well, it is that time again. We are at we have another 3 months of single-stream recycling, so I'm here for the quarterly update. We've been asking whether the new program has been encouraging more recycling here in Indian River County. I've changed up my graphic a little bit, but the basics are essentially the same. On the y-axis, we have the tonnages of outgoing recyclables, and on the x-axis is the months. So the orange line is the recycling tonnages under dual stream for the fiscal year of 2014-2015, and the blue line is this year under single stream. So when I came before, I told you that we had a 30% increase in October and November between those tonnages this year and last year, and in December it jumped up to about 56%. I'm really happy to report that those trends are continuing. We had a 40% increase in January and February between this year's tonnages and last year's tonnages. And in October, we had quite a delightful curveball of almost 70% increase in our recycling tonnages. So that's something that we're really excited about. I'm still hearing a lot of good things about the blue carts. People love the lids, they love the wheels, it's very convenient. So I'm hearing a lot of good things about it. So that kind of led us to wonder if the recycling tonnages are going up, are we seeing a decrease in our garbage tonnages? And interestingly enough, it fluctuates throughout the months, but Our garbage tonnages going into landfill is about the same as it was last year. We're doing well on the recycling arrow on our recycling symbol, so the reducing and reusing is something I'll emphasize now to my students. Waste Management gave us a couple of updates on the curbside garbage program. They had about over 1,400 new residents, new residential customers since January 4th. They expected an increase once people were able to pick which cart size they wanted. They expected a lot of people to sign up. So they've had about 1,400 since January 4th. And since January 4th, they've had about 10,600 cart swaps that they've completed. And they said at the beginning of this month, they have caught up with the backed up cart swap requests, so they're on point, and they're still getting cart swap requests coming in, but now they can deal with it as it comes in. So some positive news there as well.
Oh, just one question on that. What is the window of the cart swap, the free cart swap window? Is it open indefinitely for one swap, or is there a deadline?
Yes, it's open indefinitely for the one swap.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I was the most excited to talk to you about today was the paper shredding event that we had on April 2nd. We had hired 2 trucks from Progressive Document Destruction, and it was a little bit lower than the original estimate, but we still had a really, really great amount of paper. We diverted 12,600 pounds of paper that was shredded and sent directly to a recycling facility. So there's a lot of sensitive documents, things that people would not want to just throw in the recycling cart. So these are really papers that we've captured and recycled as opposed to going into the landfill. So we're really excited about that. The crew was efficient. They were on point. They got everybody in and out. They were very friendly. We were very happy with the company. There was about 250, I estimated about 250 cars. I had a whole box of bags that I was handing out to people and running up to the cars and giving them these reusable bags. And trying to remind them not to put plastic bags into the recycling carts. So I did an education aspect. I tried to get some feedback of what they thought of the event. All of the feedback that I got was very, very positive. People loved the event. They thanked us profusely for doing it. And they said that the wait time was very short. They were very, very happy with it. So we were really happy to hear that. Handed out about 200 bags and got to most of the cars, so probably about 250 cars. And one of the volunteers, actually who was stationed at the entrance, took a short little video. It's about 6 seconds. This is just the cars that were lined up.
Oh, nice. Wow.
And the paper shredding trucks were over there. So they said the wait time was great. The team was very efficient. A lot of positive feedback, and a lot of people were happy. They did pull over to the side and watch their documents get destroyed on site. They were very, very happy with that. So very successful event. We were very happy with it. At the same time, we had the Indian River Green Market going on inside. There was about 4,000 people that passed by the tables, that walked through that area. Many of them were looking at the displays from afar, going and talking to people. We had people from ecotourism talking about native plants, natural living, aromatherapy. We had somebody selling local honey. And of course, I had a recycling table set up. And Keeping Indian River Beautiful was there talking about their Upcycle It store and selling some of their items and collecting donations. So that was also a very successful event, and it seemed to work out very well. And then the last thing on our list is we have the electronics recycling event coming up on April 30th. That's going to be at the Indian River Fairgrounds from 9 to 3. And our recycling company, TK6, has actually given us a $250 gift card to Best Buy for us to raffle up to anybody that attends and brings something. Keep Indian River Beautiful will also be there. They'll have a donation bin available, so if anybody wants to donate to that, we can hopefully reduce some of our garbage tonnages. And that is it. That is all I have for you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner O'Brien.
Stephanie, can you go back to the slide of the garbage totals?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little puzzling because theoretically, if our recycling has gone up, and that's one of the things that the garbage studies show, that a lot of the garbage coming in had a high percentage of recyclable items that theoretically we're pulling out now. So you would think our garbage tonnage would go down. Yeah. Do we have a way of going back and seeing how much garbage is coming from the convenience centers? What Republic hauls versus what Waste Management's hauling?
That I am not entirely sure, but I can ask. That was something that was a little bit puzzling.
Because I know that with the carts And Waste Management has said they've been like almost overwhelmed with how many new curbside garbage customers are picking up. And I think people are looking at, one, the cost, and then the convenience. And I know in my neighborhood now, on like today's our recycle day, so every driveway has a blue card out now, whereas before maybe only half would have the bins out or something. And tomorrow's the garbage pickup day, and same thing. It's like almost every house now is participating. So just intuitively, I'm thinking, okay, the convenience center numbers are probably going down because now people are taking advantage of the curbside pickup and not hauling it to the convenience center. But I'm still puzzled about the total weight. I don't know if that just means that people aren't dumping as much garbage as they used to, and now it's getting picked up, and that's why because the garbage numbers should have gone down with recycling pulled out, but if they're flat, there might be additional garbage coming in, or I don't know. That's kind of funny to explain.
I think that's what it is.
I think you have
I think it's additional clients, new houses. I mean, it's people. I don't think people realize that the number of rooftops that are going up in the existing subdivisions right now.
So then, if we could get a kind of like just take some rough numbers, but total number of population and pounds per capita, and see how that's trending. That's a good point. Probably is, because I know a lot of my formerly busted subdivisions in District 4 are now full.
They're full.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Brien, we do track the tonnages from the convenience centers, and we did see about a 9 to 10% decrease in the municipal solid waste.
Okay.
And the recycling has conversely gone up about 4 or 5% at the convenience centers. But you got to remember, that's only about 10% of the total tonnage is going to the landfill from the CCCs. But we can provide that data. We can provide the population data. But you have a lot of, I think, new construction and demolition of old structures, specifically on the beach side or over on US 1. You've seen a lot of activity of reinvestment in this area. A lot of C&D, as you know, currently goes towards the landfill, and that kind of counts towards the tonnage, which is not telling of the reduction for recycling.
Okay. That's
But
a
we'll
good
get the
point.
numbers.
And then, Stephanie, secondly, great job on the shredding event. Are there plans to do this twice a year, annually? What's your future frequency on that?
I would absolutely love to do it at least once a year, if not twice a year. We had such a positive feedback from it, and a lot of people have been asking me what can they do with their paper now that they can't put it in the recycling cart. So I would absolutely love to do it at least once a year, if not twice a year, and if not more than that. So my wish list.
I'd be fully willing to support a twice-a-year event. I think as more people see it happening, it'll build and build, and it wasn't that expensive. So, if staff wants to bring something like that back, you'd have my support on it. So,
especially for the identity theft that's going on out there, I think that's like a pound of cure.
Yeah. Maybe one at the mall, maybe one up in Sebastian or something. I don't know. Figure out what makes sense, but I think that's a great service because a lot of people were complaining they couldn't put their shredded in the recycle anymore, and so I think more frequent better. I think it'd be a big benefit to the community.
I absolutely agree.
And Stephanie, again, great job on the projects as well as the Jackie Robinson event too. You had quite the table. Yours was the draw. But I have to ask, the electronics recycling event is also related to identity theft. People are very concerned about their computers and trying to destroy them before they go anywhere. I'm wondering if you can couple these events, because you have a tremendous outpouring where you can have the electronics and recycled paper or shredded paper event at the same time. We might have even a bigger draw, because both events have shown great success, and it would then reduce the amount of events you had to have and have a combined effort, if the venues will allow for that too.
Yes. Well, originally we were going to have the paper shredding electronics event together, but then we coupled it with the Indian River County Market, Green Market, and trying to do the 3 events at the same time would have been a little bit much at the mall. But yes, we'll definitely continue to couple them together. And I'm glad you brought that up. I know at the electronics event, TK6 is a completely destructive company. So anything that any of the materials, any of the computers or laptops that they get, it will be broken down and recycled. The hard drive will be wiped, it'll be broken down and recycled. They don't refurbish or resell anything. So it is a very, very secure company, and we're very confident that all of the electronic data will be secure, so nobody has to worry about security.
Can anybody, Mr. Chairman, can anybody elaborate on how, not how, I guess, but the process for Sebastian's recycling for businesses? Does anybody have any idea? I know why they did it with the breach of contract or however they felt with the not getting a CNG station up there. But are they using just the blue bins and they just have them in businesses, and now that on the same day of whatever your address is, somehow they get picked up like a resident?
I think I read where they're going to get a, was it a 2 or 4 cubic yard container at a pretty, well, I think it's free for 6 months or something, and then a pretty cheap price. So they're giving them a recyclable container, a yard, 2 or 4 cubic yard container
Yeah.
at a pretty low price.
Yeah, so I think basically what they're doing is they're giving businesses the opportunity to have 3 months of free service, and then after that it's a reduced rate for, I think you're right, I think it's the 2 yards and the 4 yard container. So I don't know that they're providing containers so much as they're just offering 3 months free and then a reduced cost after that. I think that's what they're doing. It's what I read in the paper.
And just to add to that as well is recycling, because the state of Florida does not allow us to regulate recycling. It's an open market. So Republic, Waste Management, any company can vie for the commercial recycling. I think what Waste Management is doing is to try to offer a very competitive rate with an initial offer for the first 3 months of free, but certainly 2 yardage is 10 and change, and the 4 yard was like $21 and change. For trying to attract businesses to recycle more, which is great on our side because businesses and multifamily are really those areas that we have to get better. I think we're doing a great job on the residential side with everybody getting the blue bin, but the commercial areas and the multifamily, that's where we have our work cut out for us, and that's where I think Waste Management's trying to entice those businesses. But Republic and anybody can operate in the city of Sebastian.
Benny, looking at, for example, the new multifamily units that are coming on behind the Chick-fil-A out there, it'd be interesting to see if our land development regulations had something in the code for a recycling dumpster. I dare say that the other ones don't, but it would be interesting for us to perhaps put that in there, because it was very difficult to go back and put a dumpster in for recycling, especially how our code requires it to be covered. But to be able to put that in the process of construction when it's new is very doable, and maybe something that we ought to consider putting in our code.
Okay, I'll get with community development, but I believe on new construction we have those provisions in there. I'll double check with CDD.
Thank you. Commissioner Zork.
Following up on Commissioner O'Brien's data request, Vinny, if you could also include the number of SWID payments in the current cycle. That's sort of the point of CO move in for somebody, so that will be another data piece you could put into the mix.
Okay.
Any other questions? That is.
Great job, Stephanie. Keep up the wonderful work.
Great, thank you.
Before you adjourn?
Yes.